He was already on one knee when he saw her walk through the door. The velvet box stayed closed. The bride in champagne kept smiling, frozen mid-breath, waiting for the lid to lift. It never did. 500 guests at the plaza watched the most feared man in Koreatown forget how to speak, because the woman who had just entered through the side door of the ballroom was carrying his child, 7 months of his child, and she was wearing the wine-red dress he had bought her on the night he ruined everything. Her name is Ellie Ortiz. Black, beautiful, slender build under the curve of a pregnancy she had hidden from him for half a year. She walked with one hand on top of the belly and one hand beneath it, the way a woman walks when she is carrying the only thing she has left. 8 months earlier, she was the wife of Kang Dae-won, called the Quiet One, the Korean Mafia boss with the black dragon climbing his neck. Then she opened a bedroom door and saw what she was never meant to see. She took off the ring without a word. She walked out with one suitcase. He looked for her for months. He never found her. He only found her again at the exact wrong moment, kneeling at the feet of another woman. And what happened next? In the marble hallway behind that ballroom, no one in that room was supposed to hear. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and click join to become a member and help our channel. The key turned in the lock at 4 minutes past 2 in the morning, and Ellie Ortiz already knew something was wrong before she pushed the door open. The penthouse smelled of perfume that wasn't hers. Jasmine and white musk. Heavy. Expensive. The kind of scent that didn't belong to a woman who'd spent the last 14 hours at a children's literacy nonprofit in Harlem. She set her tote bag down on the marble console by the entrance. Slowly. The way a person sets down something fragile when they already suspect they'll need their hands free. Her shoes she left by the door. She always did. Dae-won had taught her that, the Korean way. 3 years ago, on the night she first slept here. She remembered the way he'd knelt to undo the strap of her sandal himself, the way he'd said her name like it was something he'd been saving for a long time. Ellie, 2 syllables. Reverent. She walked down the hallway barefoot. The lights of Manhattan poured in through the floor-to-ceiling windows on her left. 42 floors below, taxis crawled like beetles along Park Avenue. She didn't look. She was listening. There was a sound coming from the master bedroom at the end of the hall. A soft sound. 2 voices, muffled, low. One of them laughed, a woman's laugh, not hers. Ellie stopped in the middle of the corridor. Her hand went, by reflex, to her belly. She wasn't showing yet. She didn't even know yet, not for certain. She'd been sick 3 mornings in a row, and her chest ached when she leaned against the kitchen counter, and that was all. She'd been planning to take the test tomorrow, to leave it on the nightstand for him to find when he came back from Seoul. Surprise. He wasn't supposed to be back from Seoul for 2 more days. She kept walking. The bedroom door was open by maybe 4 inches. Warm light slanted out across the marble floor. From where she stood, she could see the corner of the bed she had slept in for 2 years, the one with the cream silk duvet, and she could see the bare foot of a woman she had never seen before, lifted and crossed at the ankle over Dae-won's bare calf. Ellie didn't move. She didn't make a sound. She watched the foot. Small, pale. The toenails were painted the exact shade of champagne she had seen earlier this week, in a fitting room on Madison Avenue, on the toes of a Korean heiress named Yoona Park, who had been having a dress hemmed for some event Ellie had not been invited to. They had passed each other in the showroom. Yoona had smiled politely. Yoona had not known who Ellie was. Ellie understood, in the corridor, that Yoona had known exactly who she was. She lifted her left hand and looked at it. Her wedding ring. Platinum. Thin. A single brilliant cut diamond. He had chosen it himself, in a small shop in Insadong, the first time he ever took her to meet his mother. His mother had refused to come out of her room that night. Ellie had eaten the dinner alone with him, sitting at the kitchen counter, while his mother wept on the other side of the wall. She had stayed anyway. She had stayed for 3 years. Inside the bedroom, the woman laughed again, then said something in Korean. Then Dae-won answered, and the answer was low, amused, the voice of a man entirely at ease. Ellie understood enough Korean by now to recognize the cadence of a private joke between 2 people who had been to bed together more than once. She turned the ring with her thumb. It came off easily. It always had. Her fingers were narrow. She walked back down the hallway, soundless, the way she had come. In the kitchen, by the basin of dark stone she had picked out herself, she set the ring down on the counter. She placed it carefully in the center, where the light from the under-cabinet bulbs caught it, and made it look, for a moment, like a small clear coin. She didn't write a note. There was nothing to write that the ring did not already say. She walked back to the entrance. Her shoes she left where they were. Her tote bag she lifted. Out of the hall closet she took down one small leather suitcase, the one she had brought with her 3 years ago when she moved in, with her clothes still folded from her old studio in Bed-Stuy. She had never unpacked the bottom layer. She had told herself it was laziness. She understood now, standing in the dark closet, that it had been something else. She put on the flat black shoes by the door. She opened the door. She closed it behind her, without letting it slam. In the elevator, she watched her own face in the brushed steel of the door. Calm. Composed. The cheekbones his mother had once said, in Korean, were too soft for a daughter-in-law. The mouth she had inherited from her own mother, who had cleaned houses in Queens for 31 years and had never once told a man what he had done to her. Ellie didn't cry. She didn't shake. She watched her own breath fog a small circle on the steel and then disappear. On the ground floor, the doorman lifted his head from his book. His name was Anthony, and he had a granddaughter named after a flower Ellie couldn't remember. "Mrs. Kang," he said. "Everything okay?" She smiled at him. It was a real smile. That was what frightened her. Later, when she thought about it, that she had been able to smile at him. "Good night, Anthony," she said. She walked out into the street. 3 blocks east, she stopped at the corner of Madison and 64th, and only then did her knees go. She caught herself on the iron railing of a brownstone stoop. She breathed in. She breathed in again. The cold of the railing went up through her palm and into her wrist and stayed there. Above her, somewhere, a window air conditioner ticked. She did not let herself sit down. She kept walking. By the time the sun came up over the East River, Ellie Ortiz was on a Q train heading deep into Brooklyn, the suitcase between her knees, her phone face down on her lap. The phone had buzzed once at 4:17. Once. Then nothing. She did not look at it. She got off at Franklin Avenue. She had a friend there from college, a woman named Vivian Green, who worked nights as a charge nurse in the neonatal ICU at Brookdale and lived in a top-floor walk-up with a cat named Gospel and a spare room that had been a spare room for as long as Ellie had known her. Ellie climbed the 4 flights. She rang the bell. Vivian opened the door in a Brookdale sweatshirt and reading glasses, took one look at Ellie's face, and stepped aside without a word. In the kitchen, Vivian poured tea. The kettle whistled. Gospel wound around Ellie's ankles. Vivian set the cup down in front of her and sat across from her at the small painted table. "Talk when you can," Vivian said. "I'm not going anywhere." Ellie wrapped her hands around the cup. "I think I might be pregnant," she said. Vivian did not blink. "Okay," she said. "And I just left him." Vivian leaned back in her chair. She took off her reading glasses and set them on the table. She did not say what other people would have said. She did not say sweetheart, or oh my God, or are you sure? She said, drink your tea. Ellie drank her tea. Outside, the morning traffic on Eastern Parkway began to thicken. A bus hissed. A child shouted to another child. The light through the kitchen window was the color of weak honey. 3 days passed. Vivian went to work at 6 and came back at 7 and slept until 2 in the afternoon. Ellie did not leave the apartment. She did not look at her phone. She fed Gospel. She washed 2 cups and a plate. She lay on the couch with her hand on her belly and tried to remember the last time she had bled. On the first night she did not sleep. She sat in the dark in the small living room with the cat in her lap, and she listened to the noises of a building she did not yet know. The radiator, a baby crying somewhere 2 floors below, a man and a woman arguing in Spanish on the sidewalk, and then laughing, suddenly, and then walking on. She listened for the small, private sounds of someone trying to find her. There were none. The street was a street. Brooklyn did not know her name. On the second night she dreamed. In the dream, she was standing in the doorway of the master bedroom on the 42nd floor, and the door was open all the way. The bed was empty. The cream silk duvet was smooth. On the nightstand on Daewon's side, where he kept his watch and a small jade dish for his cufflinks, there was instead a baby. A small black baby, sleeping, with one fist near its mouth. She walked toward the bed. Before she reached it, she woke. She lay on Vivian's couch in the dark and she put both her hands over her face and she breathed through her fingers until the breathing was quiet. On the third afternoon, she got up off the couch and she walked, Finally, the 4 blocks to the small grocery on the corner of Franklin and Eastern Parkway. She bought bread. She bought eggs. She bought a bag of frozen spinach because she had read once, years ago, in a magazine in a doctor's office, that women who might be pregnant should eat dark green things. The Dominican woman behind the register looked at her face and added a small mango to the bag without ringing it up. "For you, Mommy," the woman said. "You look like you need something sweet." Ellie said thank you. She carried the bag home. On the staircase up to Vivian's apartment, she had to stop twice to lean against the wall, not because the bag was heavy, but because her legs would not do what she asked of them. On the 3rd-floor landing, an old man in a Yankees cap held the door for her and did not say a word about the way her hand shook on the railing. She made eggs in Vivian's kitchen. She made them the way her mother had taught her to make them when she was 8 years old. Butter first, heat low, salt at the end. She ate them standing at the counter because the table felt, somehow, like too much furniture for a person who was eating alone. She rinsed the plate. She rinsed the pan. She set them in the rack. She felt, for the first time in 3 days, hungry. On the 4th morning, Vivian came home from a double shift with a small white paper bag in her hand. She set it on the kitchen counter without comment. She kissed the top of Ellie's head and went to bed. Ellie sat at the kitchen table with the paper bag in front of her for almost an hour. Then she stood up. She went to the bathroom. She did the test the way the instructions said. She set it on the edge of the sink, and she sat on the closed lid of the toilet with her knees pressed together and her hands flat on her thighs, and she watched the second hand of the small clock above the door go around 3 times. She looked at the test. 2 lines. She did not cry then either. She washed her hands. She came out of the bathroom. She walked into the kitchen, and she stood very still in the center of the floor for a long time. Then she lifted the paper bag from the counter and folded it twice and put it in the bottom of the trash, and she covered it with a coffee filter, and she covered that with the wrapper of the bread. She sat down at the table. She picked up her phone. There were 41 missed calls. There were 168 text messages. There was a voicemail from his mother. There was a voicemail from his second-in-command, a man named Park Jun-pyo, who had once put his hand on the small of her back at a party and whom she had never liked. There was nothing from Yuna, because Yuna did not need to say anything. She scrolled to the most recent message from Daewon. It was a single word, please. She held the phone in her hand. She turned it. She felt the weight of it. She felt the weight of the small thing inside her, which had no weight at all yet, but which she could feel in her chest like a held breath. She thought about what it would mean to write back. She thought about the night she had met him. It had been a fundraiser at the Brooklyn Museum, 3 years and 7 months ago, on a Thursday in October. She had been working then for a small nonprofit that placed used books in school libraries in the 5 boroughs, and the nonprofit had been a side beneficiary of the gala. She had been there as staff. Black slacks, white blouse, hair pulled back, clipboard. She had been counting silent auction bidders by a glass case full of West African masks when a Korean man in a charcoal suit had stopped beside her, looked at the mask in the case, and said, in English with a faint Seoul accent, that he had seen the same mask in a museum in Lyon and that the one in Lyon was a fake. She had looked at him sideways. She had said she did not know if the one in front of them was real either. He had laughed, just once, a small, surprised laugh, like a person who had not expected to be answered. He had stayed beside her for 40 minutes. He had asked her what she did. She had told him. He had asked her why she did it. She had told him about her brother, who at 12 had read every book in the small library of his elementary school and had asked the librarian what to do next, and the librarian had told him to read them again. He had listened. He had not interrupted. When the gala band had begun to play, he had not asked her to dance. He had asked her, instead, if she would be willing, one day, to let him fund a single school in her brother's name. He had not asked for her phone number. He had given her his card. The card had no title on it, only a name, Kang Daewon, and a number. She had thrown the card in the trash, in the back of the museum kitchen, on her way out. 2 days later she had gone back, before her shift at the nonprofit, and had picked it out of the bin. The bin had been emptied. She had asked the janitor. The janitor had pointed at the dumpster behind the loading dock. She had climbed into the dumpster in her work clothes. She had found the card, folded into the corner of a coffee-stained program, with one small stain of red wine across the upper edge. She had called him from a payphone outside a bodega on Atlantic Avenue. He had picked up on the second ring. She thought, sitting at Vivian's kitchen table, about how that man had been the same man, the man with the dragon on his neck and the foot of another woman crossed over his calf. She thought about how a person could be two things at once, and how the trouble was never in choosing which to believe, but in surviving the cost of believing both. She thought about Anthony in the lobby, who had called her Mrs. Kang. She thought about Daewon's mother, who had never come out of the room. She thought about Yuna's foot crossed over his calf. She thought about the way Daewon, last Christmas, had taken her hand in front of his father and said in Korean, "This is my wife," and his father had not looked up from his soup. She thought about the people who had paid her brother's funeral 2 years ago, when her brother had been shot in a corner store in East New York for the $86 in the register. She thought about how Daewon had handled it, quietly, from a distance, through 3 different intermediaries, none of whom had ever spoken her name. She thought about how she had thanked him for it on her knees, on the bathroom floor, the night of the burial. She thought about how she had believed, that night, that a man who would do that for a stranger he had never met, only because the stranger was her brother, was a man worth giving the rest of her life to. She thought about the foot. She closed the messages. She opened the contact for Daewon Kang. She did not delete it. She knew herself. She knew that one day, maybe years from now, she would need to know exactly where his name lived in this phone, so she could decide, again, not to call it. She tapped instead on the small word block. She read the question the phone asked her. She tapped yes. Then she set the phone face down on the table. She walked to the window. The morning light came through the iron fire escape in long, bright bars and fell across the worn wood of the floor. Below, on Franklin Avenue, a woman with a stroller was waiting for the light to change. The woman was black. The woman was alone. The woman was tired in the shoulders in a way Ellie recognized. Ellie put both her hands on her belly. For the first time in 4 days, she let her breath go all the way out. "All right," she said. She said it out loud, to no one. In Vivian Green's kitchen, on the 4th floor walk-up above Franklin Avenue, with a cat at her feet, and a phone face down on the table, and a man somewhere in a 42nd floor penthouse, who did not yet know that the child he had made would never know his name from her mouth. "All right," she said again, "just you and me." She did not know yet about the foundation she would build. She did not know yet about the night, 7 months from now, at a charity gala at the Plaza Hotel, when she would walk through a side door in a wine-dark dress with her hands at the top and the bottom of a belly grown round and high, and a man in a 3-piece suit would freeze in the middle of kneeling, and a champagne-colored dress on the floor in front of him would begin, very slowly, to understand that it was about to be left there. She did not know yet about any of it. She knew only what was in front of her: a kitchen, a cat, a cup, a hand on a belly. She lifted the cup of cold tea. She drank what was left of it. She set the cup down. She stood up. She went to find Vivian, who was sleeping in the dim of the back bedroom under a thin summer quilt, and she sat down on the edge of the bed without waking her, and she watched her friend breathe in the gray morning light, and she made the second decision she would make that week. She would keep the baby, and she would not tell him, not because she wanted to punish him. She did not have the energy left for punishment. She had spent that energy on the marble counter, when she had set the ring down in the center of the light. She had nothing left of that particular fire. She would not tell him because she had watched, for 3 years, what his world did to the people in it. She had watched his older brother go to a place in Incheon for a week and come back wrong in the eyes. She had watched a man named Choi Sok-jin sit at her dinner table and lose the use of his left hand by Tuesday. She had watched the way the men around Daewon went quiet when she walked into a room, and the way they did not go quiet again when she walked out. She knew what the dragon on the side of his neck meant. She had traced it with her finger once, in bed, in the dark, and asked him what it was for, and he had said, in the voice he used only with her, "It is so I never forget where I came from." She would not give that dragon a child to teach. She closed her eyes. Vivian shifted in her sleep. A small sound, not a word. Ellie opened her eyes. She bent and kissed her friend on the temple. Vivian did not wake. Ellie stood. She went back to the kitchen. She picked up the phone. She unblocked the number. Then she blocked it again. Then, finally, she opened the settings and she changed her number entirely, right there at the kitchen table, with 2 thumbs and a steady hand, in under 4 minutes. The old number went dark, somewhere on the 42nd floor of a building on Park Avenue, A phone in a man's hand began, for the first time, to ring without ringing through. Ellie set the new phone down. She walked to the window again. The woman with the stroller was gone. The light had moved. It was almost noon. She thought, with a clarity that surprised her, that she would need to find work, a new apartment, a doctor who would take her insurance, which she would also need to find, because the insurance she had was on his policy, and she would not keep it for one more day. She thought about her old job at the literacy nonprofit in Harlem, and whether she could go back, and decided she could not, because his money had paid for half the building, and his name was on the donor wall in the lobby, and she could not walk past that name every morning for the rest of her life. She would need to start over, all of it, everything. She thought through the list in her head, the way she had once made lists for the literacy nonprofit, when a school needed 1,200 books by Friday, and she had 4 days and a borrowed van, a pediatrician in Brooklyn, a prenatal clinic that did sliding scale fees, a new bank, in her own name, no joint cards, a change of address she would not file, because she did not want a paper trail, furniture from a stoop sale, not a store, a used phone in cash, a name on a lease she could afford on whatever job she found by the end of the month. She did not write the list down. She did not need to. She had memorized longer lists than this for smaller children than the one she carried. She put her hand on her belly again. The small thing inside her was still only a held breath, but she could feel it now. She could feel it the way you feel a door that has just clicked shut behind you, in a room you have never been in before, and the lock has turned, and the only way out is forward, through whatever is waiting in the dark on the other side. She breathed in. She breathed out. She went to find a pen. She folded the paper twice and slid it into the side pocket of her purse, where her hand could find it without looking. Then she sat on the edge of the motel bed and let the silence settle around her like a coat she had not chosen but would have to wear. The motel was off the Belt Parkway, a long, low building with a buzzing sign and a vending machine that hummed louder than the highway. She had paid 2 weeks in cash. The clerk had not asked questions. He had looked at her stomach for a half-second, the way men look when they are deciding whether a woman is in trouble or just tired, and then he had slid the key across the counter and gone back to his crossword. Ellie set the key on the nightstand. She unpacked the small suitcase. 3 dresses, 2 pairs of flats, a sweater, a stack of vitamins, a folder of medical paperwork she had collected in the past week, and a single photograph of her mother that she put face down on the dresser because she could not look at it yet. She did not turn on the television. She did not call anyone. She sat by the window and watched the sky behind the bridge turn the color of old brass, and she put her hand low on her belly, and she made the second decision of her new life. She would not tell him, not because he did not deserve to know. He deserved to know. He deserved to be split open by the knowing. But she had thought about it for 6 nights now, and every road she walked down ended at the same wall, and the wall had his face on it. If she told him, he would come. He would come the way a storm comes, with no apology and no negotiation. He would put a ring back on her finger and a guard at her door and a name on the birth certificate that opened doors she did not want her child to walk through. He would do it because he loved her. He would do it because he was used to fixing the world by force. He would do it because the part of him that had held Una Park in the bed they had shared would now need a place to put its shame. And a son was a very tidy place to put shame. And one day, 10 years from now, 15, the child would ask why his father had married his mother. And the only true answer would be, because I was pregnant, and your father was a man who could not stand to be caught having broken something. She would not give a child that sentence, not while she still had a body that could carry him alone. She lay back on the thin mattress and put both hands on the small, hard rise of her abdomen, and she spoke to it for the first time out loud. "It's going to be you and me for a while," she said. "I'm sorry about the wallpaper." The wallpaper had little blue ships on it. The ships were sailing nowhere. She slept that night the way pregnant women sleep in strange beds, shallow, surfacing every 2 hours, listening for footsteps that were not coming. At 4 in the morning, she got up and drank water from the bathroom tap and stood in front of the mirror with the light off and put her palm flat on her belly and felt, for the first time, the small, definite shift of a foot turning under her hand. She did not cry. She had cried enough in the past 2 weeks to fill the East River. She just stood there in the dark with her child moving under her hand, and she said, very quietly, okay, I hear you." In the morning, she put on the sweater and the flats, and she walked 4 blocks to a diner and ordered eggs and toast and a glass of orange juice. And while she ate, she opened a notebook she had bought at a bodega and she wrote at the top of the first page, in her clean private handwriting, 3 words. Roots and wings. She underlined them once. Then she began to make a list. She made the list the way she made all lists, in columns. Income on the left, expenses on the right, time, in the third column, because time was a kind of money she had more of than she had thought. She had $19,000 in a personal account he had never touched, savings from before him, from the years she had taught reading at the after-school program in Bed-Stuy. She had a degree in social work she had never used, because he had asked her, gently, the second month they were together, to please stop working. She had said yes because she had loved him, and because the apartment he had given her had a window that looked at the river, and the river had felt, then, like a promise. The river had been a wall, it turned out, but the degree was still hers. By the end of the second cup of decaf, she had the bones of a plan. Find an apartment in Brooklyn, deep Brooklyn, somewhere he would never think to look, because he thought of Brooklyn the way Manhattan men think of Brooklyn, as a rumor. Find an OB who took walk-ins and cash. Find a lawyer, a small one, the kind that worked out of a storefront and did not Google their clients. Get a new phone. Get a new name on the lease, her mother's maiden name, Whitfield, the one she had been thinking about for 6 nights. And then, when the baby was a few months old and her body was hers again, build the thing she had written at the top of the page. A foundation for women who had been left by powerful men, not divorced. Left, disappeared from. The ones who woke up one morning and the account was frozen and the lawyer would not return the call, and the man who had bought them the apartment had also bought the building and was politely, quietly, asking them to leave by the end of the month. The ones who were pregnant when it happened. Especially those. She did not need a mission statement. She had been one of those women for 16 days. She knew the mission in her body. She paid the check in cash and tipped well, and walked back to the motel through a morning that smelled like rain on warm concrete, and she did not look at any of the men she passed. The apartment took her 4 days to find. A second-floor walk-up on a side street off Nostrand. 2 rooms and a kitchen that fit a table for 2. A landlady named Mrs. Bautista, who looked at the pregnancy and the cash deposit, and the name on the application, and asked exactly one question. You running from somebody, mija? Ellie held her eyes. I'm running toward something. Mrs. Bautista nodded slowly. She had a cross on a chain at her throat and a way of standing that suggested she had been asked harder questions in her life and had answered them with her hands. She slid the keys across the table. Front door locks at 10, she said. The boiler is loud. The boy upstairs plays his music loud back. You tell me if anyone comes asking for you who is not on the lease, and I tell them you moved to Florida. Ellie's throat closed for 1 second. Then it opened. Thank you, she said. She moved in with 2 suitcases and the photograph of her mother and a folding crib she bought used from a woman in Crown Heights who had insisted on cleaning every slat with vinegar before she would let it leave the house. The crib went under the window. The window looked at a fire escape and, beyond it, a sliver of the next block, where a man sold mangoes off a cart in summer and roasted chestnuts off the same cart in winter. The view was not the river. The view was better. The view had people in it. The OB was a woman named Dr. Ifeoma Achebe, whose office was on the ground floor of a brownstone 3 subway stops away. She took the cash without comment and ran the first ultrasound on a machine that was older than most of her interns, and she turned the screen toward Ellie and said, in a voice with no theater in it, Boy. Healthy. Measuring a day ahead. Art is excellent. Ellie watched the small bright flutter on the screen and pressed her lips together until they hurt. Father in the picture? Dr. Achebe asked, not looking up from the keyboard. No. Do we expect him to be? No. All right. The doctor typed for another moment. Then she set down the keyboard and looked at Ellie with the flat, kind expression of a woman who had delivered 8,000 babies and was not going to pretend the 9th was a miracle. Then we plan for a healthy you. The rest sorts itself. Ellie left the office with a folder of prenatal vitamins and a printout of the ultrasound and the first appointment for the second trimester written on a card in the doctor's small square handwriting, and she walked back to the train through a Brooklyn that was loud and indifferent and did not know her, and for the first time in 2 weeks she breathed all the way down into her lungs. The lawyer was harder. The lawyer she found through a woman at a prenatal yoga class who had looked at Ellie's bare left hand and her steady belly and her quiet eyes and had said, after the closing pose, very low, if you ever need somebody to file paperwork that does not get found, his name is Marcus Liu, and he is in Sunset Park. Marcus Liu was 60 years old and ran his practice out of a converted bakery storefront and had 3 potted plants that looked, all 3, like they had survived more than one regime. He listened to Ellie for 40 minutes without interrupting. He did not write anything down. When she finished, he tapped a pen against the desk twice and said, "You want 3 things. A name change, a trust for the child that the father cannot reach, and a paper trail that, if anyone ever comes looking, shows you have been in Florida since November." "Yes, I can do all 3. The Florida thing will cost extra." "How much extra?" He named a number. She paid it. She walked out of his office with new paper for a new life, and on the train home she put her hand on her belly and she said, in her head, "We are buying you time. We are buying you time so that one day you can choose whether to know him with your own mouth." Then, in the 4th month, she began to build the foundation. She built it the way she had built everything in her life before him, slowly, with her own hands, with a notebook and a pen and a list of people she had not spoken to in 3 years because he had not liked them. The first person she called was a woman named Vanessa, who had worked beside her at the after-school program in Bed-Stuy and who had become, in the years since, the director of a small community center on Atlantic Avenue. Vanessa had picked up on the second ring and said only, "Ellie, where are you?" in a voice that had no surprise in it and a lot of relief. Ellie had told her where she was. She had not told her about him by name. She had only said, "I'm starting something. I need a room twice a week, and a phone number that isn't mine, and a person who can sit with women while I talk to them, because I can't be alone with strangers right now." Vanessa had said, "You can have the back room on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The phone is the center's line. I'll sit with you myself." That was how Roots and Wings began. In a back room on Atlantic Avenue, with 3 folding chairs and a kettle and a box of tissues, Vanessa had bought at the dollar store on her way to work. The first month, 2 women came. One was 24 and 4 months pregnant by a city councilman who had stopped returning her texts. The other was 38 and not pregnant and had been the kept companion of a hedge fund manager for 11 years and had been told, the previous Wednesday, that the apartment lease was up and would not be renewed. Ellie listened to them. She did not give advice the first night. She gave them tea and she listened, and at the end of the hour she gave each of them a folded piece of paper with 3 phone numbers on it. A doctor who took cash, a lawyer who took small cases, a landlady in Brooklyn who did not ask questions. The 2 women had looked at the paper and then at her quiet face and the small pregnant rise under her cardigan, and one of them had said, very softly, "You too?" "Me too," Ellie had said. "But I had savings. Most don't. That is what this room is for." In the 5th month, the room had 6 women in it. In the 6th month, it had 11, and Vanessa moved them to the larger hall and brought in a second kettle. In the 7th month, the month her body began to slow her down, Ellie incorporated the foundation as a non-profit under the name on her new paperwork, Elena Whitfield, and she put 2 trusted women on the board and herself as executive director with a salary of $1 a year, because every other dollar she had was going into the trust the lawyer had built for the boy. She did not put her face on the website. The website was a single page with a phone number and the 3 words at the top, underlined once, Roots and Wings, below the words, in smaller letters, for women rebuilding after powerful men, no appointment necessary, no questions asked. The phone began to ring. It rang in the back room on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It rang on Vanessa's cell when Ellie went home to sleep. It rang in a way that told Ellie, quietly, that she had been right about how many of them there were. The city was full of women who had lived inside other people's apartments and had walked out one morning with a suitcase and a story no one would believe, and a body that, sometimes, was carrying the next chapter of that story, whether they wanted it to or not. She did not tell any of them about him, not by name, not by industry. When they asked, gently, who her own had been, she said only, "Someone who was used to winning. I stopped letting him." They nodded. They did not press. Women who have survived powerful men know not to ask for the name. The name is the part you keep, the way you keep a scar, in a private place you can touch, when you need to remember why you left. She let the pregnancy show now. She wore the soft sweaters and the long skirts and the flat shoes Mrs. Bautista's daughter had brought her from the outlet mall, and she walked to the foundation room twice a week, with one hand on the top of the belly and one hand on the base, the way her mother had taught her women in their line carried their children, high and proud, and held from both sides. She let strangers on the train smile at her. She let an old Korean woman in the produce aisle of the corner market touch the curve of her stomach without asking, and bless it in a language Ellie did not speak, and walk away before Ellie could thank her. She kept her left hand bare. She did not wear a ring of any kind. When women in the back room asked, in the quiet way they asked, where the father was, she said, "Not here," and they understood her to mean dead, and she did not correct them. The dead was easier to explain than the living. The dead did not have a face on the side of a building in Midtown, because he was on the side of a building now. She had seen it from the train, the second month she was in Brooklyn. A black and white photograph the size of a billboard, his profile, the jawline she had once traced with her thumb, advertising a watch he had not designed and did not need to wear. The caption underneath had said his family name in 2 languages and a word she had translated under her breath. Legacy. She had laughed out loud on the train, a small dry laugh. The woman next to her had given her a quick worried look. Ellie had said, "Sorry, I just remembered something." And she had turned her face to the window and watched the building go by until his jaw was gone. She did not look at the gossip pages. Vanessa filtered them for her. Vanessa told her, in the 7th month, that there was going to be a wedding announcement soon. Vanessa told her this very carefully, the way you tell a pregnant woman that her old life is closing a door, in case the closing made her cry. Ellie had not cried. Ellie had only asked, "Who?" Park Yuna. Her father runs a group out of Seoul. They are doing the engagement gala at the plaza in October. There is talk. It is also a merger. Ellie had thought about Yuna Park's small bare back arched on her own sheets, and about the way Daewon had not even looked up when the door opened, and she had felt, for one clear second, nothing. Not rage, not grief, nothing. The way a room feels after a fire has finally burned itself out. Then she had said, "Good. Let him marry her. I have work to do." And she had gone back to the foundation room and to the woman from Queens who was crying because her ex had cut off the cell phone she used to call her daughter at the boarding school he was paying for. And Ellie had sat with her and held her hand and made the calls that needed to be made, and at the end of the hour the woman had a new phone and a new number and an appointment with Marcus Liu for Thursday. That was the 7th month. Between the 7th month and the 8th, 2 things happened that Ellie would later, in private, count as the small hinges on which the rest of her life turned. The first happened on a Thursday in early September. A woman walked into the foundation room who Ellie almost did not recognize at first, because her hair was different and her face was thinner, and she had a small girl of perhaps 4 years old clutching at her skirt. The woman was Korean. Her name was Hana. She had been, 3 years earlier, one of the cocktail waitresses at a private club in Koreatown that Daewon had taken Ellie to exactly twice, the year they were first together. Ellie had liked her. Hana had brought her a glass of plum wine without being asked, the second visit, because she had remembered. Hana sat down in the folding chair across from Ellie now, and looked at her belly for a long second and said, in careful English, "I know you." Ellie kept her face very still. "I think you have me confused with someone." Hana looked at her for another long second. Then her eyes softened, and she said, "Yes, I am confused. I am sorry, my English is bad today." And she set her hands flat on her knees and she told Ellie, in that careful English, what had happened to her. A man in the same business as the man Ellie did not know. A daughter he had wanted at first and then had not wanted. A bank account that had closed on a Tuesday. An apartment in Long Island City that she had been asked, politely, to vacate. Ellie listened. She made the calls. She gave Hana the folded paper with the 3 numbers, and a 4th number this time. A woman in Sunset Park who took in Korean-speaking mothers for the first month at no cost. At the door, leaving, Hana turned back. She did not say Ellie's name. She only said, "The boy will be lucky." Ellie said, "So will yours." The door closed. Ellie sat in the folding chair for 10 minutes without moving, and she understood, in that 10 minutes, that the world she had walked out of was small, and that her secret was held now by at least one woman who had chosen, on her own, to keep it. The second thing happened a week later, in Dr. Achebe's office, at the appointment that marked 32 weeks. The doctor ran the wand across the belly, and stopped, and ran it again, and was quiet for a beat longer than usual. Ellie's stomach turned over once. "He's fine," Dr. Achebe said immediately, reading her face. "Heart is excellent. He has just turned. He is head down. He is ready." Ellie let her breath out. Ready for what? Ready for the second half of his life. The doctor smiled. the small dry smile she gave when she was making a joke that was also a fact. The first half he did entirely inside you. The second half he will need help with. Are you ready for the help? I have help. Good. Dr. Achebe wiped the gel from the belly with a soft cloth and pulled Ellie's sweater back down with the same gentleness she used on every woman. Then we deliver this child in 6 weeks, and we let the second half begin. Ellie walked home from that appointment along the long way, past the brownstones and the small bakery with the $7 loaves, and the old man who sold cut flowers from a bucket on the corner. She bought 1 stem of white freesia for $2 and she carried it home in her hand, and she put it in a jar on the windowsill above the second-hand crib, and she stood there for a moment looking at the small white flower and the small white crib, and she said out loud, "Almost." The boy moved under her hand, as if to answer. The 8th month was the month of the gala invitation. It arrived at the foundation address, not at her home, because no one outside Vanessa and Marcus knew where she lived. It was heavy cream cardstock with copperplate engraving and a tissue overlay and a small embossed seal in the corner. It was addressed to Elena Whitfield, Executive Director, Roots and Wings Foundation. It was not from him. It was from the Plaza's philanthropy office. The Roots and Wings Foundation was being recognized at the upcoming October Benefit Gala for its work with displaced women and children. The honoree would be acknowledged formally during the evening's program. Black tie. 2 seats at the head table. Vanessa read the card over Ellie's shoulder in the foundation kitchen and went very still. Then she said, very carefully, "Honey, the October Gala, at the Plaza." "Yes," Ellie said. "You know whose engagement is at the Plaza in October?" "Yes." Vanessa put the card down on the counter and turned and looked at Ellie's 8-month belly and at her calm, tired face and at her bare left hand, and she said, "Tell them no. Send me. I will accept the honor on behalf of the foundation. He will never know you were in the building." Ellie picked up the card. She turned it over once in her hands. She looked at the embossed seal and at her mother's maiden name printed in copperplate, and she thought about the woman from Queens whose ex had cut off her phone, and the woman from Crown Heights whose ex had taken her car, and the 11 women who had sat in the back room the previous Tuesday, and the 7 who were coming on Thursday, and she thought about the boy inside her, who in 6 weeks would have a face, and the face would belong to no one but himself. "No," she said, "I'll go. Ellie, I'll go." She set the card down. Her hand was steady. "I built this in his shadow because I had to. I'm not going to accept the honor for it in his shadow too. The boy needs to know, one day, that his mother walked into the room." Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "What if he sees you?" Ellie put one hand on the top of her belly and the other on the base, the high and held way, and she looked her oldest friend in the eye, and she said, very quietly, "Then he sees me. I am not the secret anymore. He is." She picked up the card and slid it into her purse, into the same side pocket where, 8 months earlier, she had folded the motel receipt the night she had decided not to tell him. Then she went back into the foundation room and told the women waiting there that the kettle was on, and that anyone who needed paperwork started today should sign the clipboard by the door. 7 months and 3 weeks after she walked out of the penthouse in Tribeca, Ellie Ortiz stood in front of a full-length mirror in a small dressing room on the 3rd floor of the Plaza Hotel and tried to figure out how a woman with a belly the size of a watermelon was supposed to breathe inside a dress. The dress did not actually squeeze her. She had measured it twice. The crepe was heavy and dark, deep Bordeaux that drank the light from the vanity bulbs and gave nothing back. The empire waist lifted just under her chest and let the rest of the fabric fall in a soft column over the round shape of her stomach. The V at the collarbone was modest. The 3/4 sleeves covered the part of her arms she still felt shy about. There was a small slit on the left side that ended well above the knee, so she could walk without taking the steps of a woman afraid of falling. She placed one hand on the top of the belly and the other under it, the way she had learned to do without thinking, and she watched the woman in the glass do the same. "You look like a painting," Mama Rose said from the doorway. "A painting that is about to deliver a sermon." Ellie laughed, and the laugh moved the baby. A small foot pressed up under her ribs and then slid sideways. She breathed through it. "I look like a woman who is going to walk into a ballroom full of strangers in 20 minutes, she said. "You look like the reason the ballroom exists tonight." Mama Rose shut the door behind her. "The board wants you downstairs at 8. Photographers at the side door at 7:50. Daniela has the speech printed in 12 point because you said 14 looked desperate." It does look desperate. It does. Mama Rose smiled. Ellie sat slowly on the velvet chair and let the older woman fasten the long gold earrings into her lobes. The gold threw little coins of light across the wall. Are you scared? Mama Rose asked. Of being seen. Mama Rose put a warm hand against her cheek. Then let them see you, baby. That is also a sermon. 20 minutes later, Ellie stood at the side entrance of the grand ballroom with Daniela on her right and a hotel security officer on her left, and she watched through a sliver of open door as 400 people in black tie ate the first course of a dinner she had not paid for. The ceiling glittered, the chandeliers threw long ovals of gold across the white tablecloths. A string quartet was finishing something slow. They want you to come in from the main door, Daniela whispered. With the cameras. Big entrance. But I told them you said side. I said side. I know. I'm just telling you they tried. Ellie nodded. Through the crack she could see the head table at the front of the room, raised on a low dais under a banner that read, Roots and Wings Foundation, in clean cream letters on dark green. To the right of the dais, near a tall arrangement of white orchids, a small podium waited with a microphone. To the left, a screen the size of a wall was already showing photographs of the women the foundation had housed that year. Faces she knew, faces she had sat across the kitchen table from. A young woman from the Dominican Republic with twins. A girl from Queens who had been 17 when her boyfriend's family put her on a train back to her mother. A woman from Lagos who had been a corporate lawyer before the man she had married decided that a baby was inconvenient to his schedule. Ellie watched her own work scroll across that wall and felt the foot under her ribs press again. All right, she said softly. Open the door. She did not see Kang Dae-won at first. She came in along the wall, behind a wait station, behind a wall of orchids that hid the side approach from the main floor. Daniela led her by the elbow, and the hotel officer stayed 2 paces behind. The plan was simple. Walk along the back of the room to the small staircase behind the dais, climb the 3 steps, sit at the head table next to the chair of the board, and wait until the program reached the segment for the founder's address. She kept her eyes on the floor. The carpet was a deep green with a gold pattern. Her sandals were quiet. The baby kicked twice in quick succession and then went still, listening. She was halfway across the back of the room when she heard the gasp. It was a small gasp, not loud, not the kind that stops a ballroom. It came from a table on the right, near the orchids, where a woman in a silver gown had turned her head toward the dais and forgotten to close her mouth. The man beside her turned too, and then the table behind that one. The string quartet had stopped between pieces. A waiter froze with a tray of champagne at his shoulder. Ellie lifted her eyes. At the front of the ballroom, on the polished parquet between the head table and the first row of round tables, a man in a black 3-piece suit was lowering himself onto one knee. He had his back to her. His shoulders were broad and held tight under the wool. His hair was combed back the way it had always been combed back. The gold cufflink at his right wrist caught the light from above the dais and threw a small star against the leg of his trousers. In his right hand, balanced on his open palm, sat a square velvet box. In front of him, in a champagne gown that exploded with crystal across the bust and trailed a long tail of tulle down the parquet, stood Una Park. She was smiling. Her dark hair was up in a smooth twist. Her mother and father were 2 tables away, half standing, her mother's hand pressed against her own mouth in that practiced way wealthy women have of pretending to be surprised. A photographer Ellie had not noticed was crouched low with a long lens, already firing. The whole ballroom had gone quiet around the moment. Ellie stopped walking. She did not mean to. Her feet simply stopped. Her right hand, the one that had been resting on the top of the belly, slid down to the side, and her left hand stayed where it was, low and steady, holding the weight of her child the way she always held it. The Bordeaux fabric moved once around her ankles and settled. Daniela whispered her name. Ellie did not hear it. She was looking at the back of a head she had loved for 7 years, the line of the neck, the little place behind the ear where she had once pressed her face when he came home late and smelled like the cold, the black ink of the dragon's tail, just barely visible above the collar of his white shirt. Dae-won had not opened the box yet. He was about to speak. His shoulders had drawn the breath. His right knee was firm on the parquet. Yuna's right hand was extended, palm down, the empty ring finger waiting, and then he turned his head. It was a small movement. He did not stand. He did not even shift his knee. He simply turned his face toward the back of the room, the way a man turns when he feels a draft from a door, and his eyes found the wall of orchids and the side aisle behind it, and the woman in the deep red dress who had stopped walking near the wait station. His face did not change at first. It was as if his face had not been informed yet of what his eyes were seeing. Then it changed. Ellie watched it happen from 40 feet away. The slow shift of the jaw, the way his mouth, which had been about to form a sentence rehearsed all afternoon, simply forgot the sentence. The way his eyes dropped from her face to her belly and stayed there. The way his right hand, the hand that held the box, lowered an inch, then two, then settled against his thigh as if the box had become heavier than it had been a second ago. He did not open it. Yuna's hand was still extended. A small confused sound came from the table where Yuna's mother stood. Someone at the back of the room set a wine glass down too hard against a plate. The photographer with the long lens lowered his camera halfway and then, very slowly, raised it again and pointed it at the back of the room, at the woman in Bordeaux. Dago was still on one knee. His eyes had not left Ellie's stomach. Ellie did not move. She did not lift her chin in defiance, and she did not lower it in shame. She kept one hand under the belly and let the other rest flat along the side of the dress, and she breathed. The baby kicked once, hard, just under her hand, and she pressed gently in answer. Daewon closed his eyes. It lasted less than a second. When he opened them, he was looking at the parquet between his knee and Yuna's silver sandals. Then he stood up. He stood up slowly, the way a much older man stands. He did not wobble. He did not look at Yuna. He turned the velvet box once in his hand, the way a man turns a coin he is not sure he wants to spend, and then he closed his fingers around it until it disappeared inside his fist. Yuna's smile cracked at the edge, just a hairline. Most of the room did not see it. Ellie saw it, the mother saw it, the photographer saw it through his lens and lowered the camera again and did not raise it. Day, Yuna said. Her voice carried, because the room had gone so quiet that even the air had stopped moving. Honey, the box. Daewon did not look at her. He turned, on the parquet, in front of 400 people, and faced the back of the room. He took one step toward Ellie, then another. The black wool of his trousers moved soundlessly. His left hand opened at his side. His right hand still held the closed box. Yuna said his name again, sharper this time. He did not turn. Ellie watched him cross 30 feet of polished floor under the chandeliers without once breaking eye contact with her face. He did not look at her belly again. He had already looked. He had already understood. Now he was looking only at her eyes, and his own eyes had gone a color she had not seen on him in years. Not the cold black of the boardroom, not the flat black of the night she had heard his footsteps in the hallway with another woman behind him. It was a softer black, a wet black. The black of a man who has just remembered something he forced himself to forget. He stopped 6 feet from her. He did not kneel again. He did not speak. He stood there, in the side aisle of the Plaza Ballroom, in front of every donor and every camera and every senator's wife, and he held the closed velvet box at his side, and he looked at her as if he had been walking through a desert for 7 months, and had just turned a corner and found a well. Behind him, on the parquet, Yuna Park stood alone in a champagne gown with her empty hands still half extended. For a long second, nobody in the room breathed. Then a single woman at a back table, an older black woman in a deep purple dress that Ellie did not recognize, began to clap. Slow. Once. Twice. 3 times. She was not clapping for Yuna. She was not clapping for Daewon. She was looking at Ellie and clapping. The way you clap for a runner who has just finished a race nobody told the crowd she was in. 2 more women joined her. Then a man at another table. Then a whole table. The clapping spread along the back wall first, then up the sides, slow and uneven. Not the polite applause that meets a speech, but the surprised, almost shaky applause that meets a thing the body recognizes before the mind catches up. Yuna's mother sat down very suddenly. Her father did not. Daewon had not moved. His eyes were still on Ellie's face. His mouth opened once and closed again, and Ellie watched him swallow whatever sentence he had been about to use and put it back into his throat unspoken. He was, she realized with a quiet shock, the most disciplined man she had ever met. Even now, even here. He was not going to speak in front of 400 witnesses. He was waiting for her permission. She did not give it. She held his gaze for 3 slow beats. Then she lowered her chin half an inch, the way you acknowledge a man you used to know, and she stepped sideways around him without touching him, and she kept walking toward the small staircase behind the dais. Daniela caught up to her at the second step. Her hand on Ellie's elbow was shaking. Ellie, Ellie, do you want to leave? We can leave. Right now. Out the back. The car is at… No, Ellie said softly. I came here to speak. I am going to speak. She climbed the 3 steps. She crossed the dais. The board chair, a small white-haired woman named Patricia, who had founded a women's shelter in Harlem 40 years before Ellie had been born, was already standing to pull out her chair. Patricia's eyes were enormous. She did not say a word. She simply touched Ellie's wrist as Ellie sat, the small, dry touch of a woman who has watched many other women survive many other rooms. Ellie sat. She arranged the Bordeaux fabric over her knees with both hands. She placed the small gold clutch on the table beside her water glass. She did not look at the parquet behind her, where she knew, without turning her head, that Kang Dae-won was still standing 6 feet from where she had passed him, with a closed velvet box in his hand and his back now to 400 people. The applause from the back tables had not stopped. It had grown. It rolled forward now, table by table, until even the front rows, the ones full of investors and Park family allies, had begun to clap, because clapping had become the only safe thing to do. Una Park stood alone on the dance floor with her hand still half extended for a ring that had not arrived, and her face was a beautiful disaster. She lowered the hand. She closed it into a fist at her side. She looked at the back of Daewon's head, then at the head table on the dais, and her eyes found Ellie's eyes across 30 feet of clapping room. There was no recognition in her face. She did not know who Ellie was. She had never seen a photograph. Daewon had been very careful, in the early months of their arrangement, to scrub his life of any image of the woman he had been married to in everything but paper. Una only knew, from one look at Ellie's stomach and one look at Daewon's back, that the man she had spent 8 months engineering had just been removed from her hand by a stranger in a red dress who was not a stranger at all. She did the only thing a woman of her training could do in that moment. She lifted her chin. She gathered the long tulle tail of her gown in her left fist, and she walked off the parquet in the opposite direction, toward the main doors, with her mother trailing 1 step behind her, and her father standing at the table with a champagne flute in his hand, that he was no longer drinking from. The string quartet, after a long bewildered pause, began to play again. Something soft, something that did not belong to weddings. Daewon finally turned. He looked once at the empty parquet where his fiancée had stood. He looked once at the table where Yuna's father stared at him, with an expression Ellie could read even from the dais. It was not anger, it was calculation. Mr. Park was already counting columns. Then Daewon walked, slowly, with the closed box still in his hand, to an empty chair at a table on the far side of the room, and he sat down in it. He did not take off his jacket. He did not pick up a glass. He set the velvet box on the white tablecloth in front of him, and he placed both hands flat on either side of it, and he stared at it, the way a man stares at a thing he no longer knows what to do with. Ellie watched him for the length of 1 breath. Then she turned her face toward Patricia and accepted the small glass of still water Patricia had quietly poured for her, and she drank 1 slow sip, and she set the glass down without a sound. "Whenever you're ready, dear," Patricia whispered. "In a moment," Ellie said. "Let the room settle." The room did not settle quickly. Whispers ran along the tables like a small fire moving through dry grass. A waiter dropped a fork, and the sound of it on the parquet made 3 different people jump. The photographer with the long lens had moved closer to the dais and was firing in soft bursts now, 1 frame after another of Ellie in Bordeaux, 1 hand still resting low under the belly, her face composed as a closed door. The morning show man from the network was on his phone, his back to the room, his voice low and urgent. Daniela slipped into the seat to Ellie's left. She was pale under her makeup. "He is sitting at table 14, she whispered. "By himself. He sent the woman who was supposed to sit there away. He has not opened the box." "I know," Ellie said softly. "Do you want me to have him removed?" Ellie almost smiled. The thought of Daniela, 5'3", asking the hotel security officer to remove Kang Dae-won from a charity gala. "No," she said. "He paid for table 14. He can sit at table 14. He paid for table 14, Daniela repeated, very slowly. "Ellie, it is on the donor list. Park Holdings, $80,000, table 14. I saw the list this morning." Daniela closed her eyes for a second, then she opened them. So he knew. He knew the foundation was holding a gala. He did not know the founder was me. How? Because I built the foundation under my mother's maiden name. Roots and Wings is registered to E. Carter. Daniela, Ellie Carter is on every public document. My mother was a Carter before she was an Ortiz. He has never met her. He never asked. Daniela exhaled a single long breath through her nose. On the screen above the dais, the slideshow of the Foundation's women had ended and a new slide had appeared. It said, in clean cream letters on dark green, a word from our founder. Patricia stood up. She tapped the small microphone in front of her plate twice with one finger, a gentle metallic knock that pulled the last of the whispers down to a hum. Friends, Patricia said. Her voice was old and dry and absolutely steady. Thank you for your patience. There has been, as you can all see, a small moment of personal drama in our ballroom tonight. We will let those involved attend to it in private as they see fit. What I will ask of you, as the chair of this board, is that you remember why you came. You came for the women whose faces you saw on that screen. You came because 18 months ago, a young woman in Brooklyn sat down at a kitchen table with 3 of her neighbors and a kettle, and she decided that no mother in this city was going to be left alone with a baby and a duffel bag, because a wealthy man had finished with her. That young woman is sitting beside me tonight. She is going to speak now. I would like you, before she speaks, to do her the simple honor of putting your forks down and giving her your eyes. The room did. 400 sets of cutlery touched the tablecloths almost in unison. Ellie stood. She did not rush. She held the edge of the table with one hand for balance and pushed herself up slowly, the way a pregnant woman pushes herself up out of any chair, and she walked the 4 steps to the podium with her left hand under the belly and her right hand loose at her side. She adjusted the microphone down 2 inches. She looked out at the room. She did not look at table 14. My name is Ellie Carter Ortiz, she said. Her voice came out softer than she had expected, and the microphone caught it and carried it cleanly into every corner of the ballroom. I am 30 years old. I am 7 months pregnant with my first child, and 18 months ago I started this foundation because I was very tired of the story we tell about women, like the women on that screen. She paused. She breathed. The baby moved. The story we tell is that they made a bad choice. The story we tell is that they should have known better. The story we tell is that a powerful man is a powerful man, and a woman who lies down with one and gets up alone with a baby in her body has only herself to blame. That story is convenient. It is also a lie. The truth is that powerful men, in this city and in many other cities, have learned that there are very few consequences for the quiet kind of harm. The truth is that the women on that screen are not foolish. They are generous. They believed a promise. And when the promise was withdrawn, they were told to be quiet about it, because the man's name was worth more than their grief. She stopped. She let the sentence settle. Somewhere in the middle of the room, a woman in green sequins was crying without making a sound. Ellie did not turn her head toward table 14. She did not have to. She could feel him there, the way you feel weather coming in off the water. Roots and wings exists, she said, to make those women a louder room than the one that told them to be quiet. We house them. We pay for the early doctor visits. The insurance forgets. We pay the lawyer who writes the letter the father's lawyer does not expect. We pay the daycare so she can finish her degree. We pay the rent for the first 6 months so she does not have to choose between a crib and the lights. We do not ask her what she did to deserve the man who left. We ask her what she needs to begin. A small ripple of applause moved through the back of the room. Ellie raised one hand slightly and the applause stopped. I want to thank our donors tonight. I want to thank the chair of our board, Patricia Lynn, who took a phone call from a stranger in Brooklyn 18 months ago and said yes before I had finished the sentence. I want to thank the women who have allowed us to use their photographs on that screen, because every one of those women had to be asked, and every one of them said yes, because she wanted the next woman to know she was not alone. The baby pressed up under her ribs and she let her left hand rest a little higher on the belly. And I want to say one more thing, and then I will sit down, because Patricia has promised me a very small piece of cake. A soft, warm laugh moved through the room. It was the first laugh of the night, and it sounded like relief. I want to say that this work is not about revenge. I have been asked many times this year whether I built this foundation to punish a particular kind of man. The answer is no. I built it to feed a particular kind of woman. The man, in whichever penthouse, is not interesting to me anymore. He has had enough rooms named after him. This room is named after her. After all of her. After the kettle on the stove and the duffel bag at the door, and the small hand that is about to arrive in her life, and call her by a name no man can take away from her. She paused. That is all I came to say. Thank you for being here. Please enjoy the rest of your evening. And please, if you have not yet written the check you were planning to write a slightly larger one. The kettle is always on. She stepped back from the podium. The room rose. It rose unevenly, table by table, the way it had clapped earlier, except this time the clapping was full and clean, and went on long enough that Patricia had to gently take Ellie's elbow and guide her back to her chair. Ellie sat. She drank the rest of the water. She did not look at table 14, but she felt, very clearly, the moment Kang Dae-won lowered his face into his hands at his empty table and kept it there, while 400 strangers stood up for the woman he had not opened a box in front of. She placed both her hands on top of her belly, the way she always did when the baby was listening, and she breathed. The side door of the grand ballroom did not close behind her. It hissed slowly on its hydraulic hinge and stayed open an inch, the way doors do when a room has emptied of air. Ellie walked. The corridor was longer than she remembered from the rehearsal. Marble the color of cream and rust ran the length of it. Tall arched windows on the left held the dark of Fifth Avenue and the small yellow lamps of carriages waiting on the curb below. Mirrors on the right multiplied her into a procession of one woman in a Bordeaux dress, one hand on the top of her belly, one hand under it, walking forward without hurry. Daniela was 3 steps behind her and trying not to be. Ellie, keep up or stay there. Either is fine. Security is at the elevator. The car is at the side. We can be in Brooklyn in 20 minutes. I know. Mama Rose is asking what you want her to tell the head table. Tell them I am taking the air. On the 3rd floor? They will believe it because they want to. Daniela slowed. Ellie did not. The marble cooled the soles of her sandals through the thin gold leather. The baby shifted high and to the left, the way he always did when she walked fast, and she made her steps shorter on purpose. She passed a tall vase of white peonies on a side table. She passed a small framed print of a Manhattan skyline at dawn. She passed a service door that was painted to match the wall and almost disappeared. Behind her, a long way back at the ballroom end of the corridor, a door swung wider than the hydraulic intended. A man's footsteps came onto the marble. Not security footsteps, not the soft, careful tread of a hotel staffer. These were the footsteps of a man in $500 Oxfords who had forgotten, for the first time in a long time, to think about how loud he was being. Ellie. His voice carried under the chandelier she was about to walk under. It hit the back of her neck like a hand laid there without permission. She did not stop. Ellie, please. She did not stop. The footsteps came faster. The dragon on his neck would be visible now, she knew, because the collar of his shirt always opened when he ran. The black scales would catch the corridor light. The tail at the clavicle and the head behind the ear, the thing she had once traced with her finger in the dark of their first apartment, when she still believed that ink on a man told you anything about who he was. She walked. He caught up to her under the second chandelier. Ellie, stop. Please. She stopped because she chose to, not because his hand reached out. He had not reached out. He stood 3 feet behind her in the middle of the marble, and he was breathing the way a runner breathes after a sprint he did not train for. His 3-piece turno was still buttoned. His tie was still straight. The black velvet box that had been in his hand 20 minutes ago in front of 400 people was not in his hand now. She turned slowly. She turned with her hand on the top of her belly, because she always did, and because tonight she wanted him to see it. He saw it. His face did something she had never watched a face do in real time. The frozen thing at the dais had been the first crack. This was the second. The corners of his mouth pulled down without his permission. The skin around his eyes tightened. The widescreen, lit by news, photograph everywhere face of Kang Dae-won, the one she had first seen on a magazine cover at a newsstand in 2019, and not understood she was looking at her future husband, did the one thing that face had never done in public. It broke. He did not speak right away. He looked at her belly, and then at her hands, and then at her face, and then at her belly again, and his throat worked twice before any sound came out of it. How long? It was not a question. It was the beginning of one, and it died on his tongue. 7 months and 3 weeks, she said. He closed his eyes. Dae-won, open your eyes. If you are going to look at me, look at me. He opened them. Was it the night before? Yes. The Tuesday? Yes. You knew. I found out 3 weeks later. Why? The word came out of him like something heavy he had been carrying behind his teeth for a long time, and finally set down. She did not answer for a moment. She held the question, and she turned it in the air between them, and she made him stand there while she decided how much of the truth he was going to be allowed to have in a corridor on the third floor of a hotel where 400 people were eating salmon and pretending not to wonder where their host had gone. Because, she said, the first thing I would have done if I told you is take this child away from you. His face did not move. You do not understand. Listen to me. I would have used him. I would have used him to make you pay. I would have used him to keep you. I would have used him to keep myself from being the woman who left, because the woman who leaves with a baby in her belly is not the woman who leaves. She is the woman who waits to see if he comes back. Ellie, I did not want to wait. I would have come back. You did not come back when I had a ring on. Why would you have come back when I had a baby? He had no answer for that. He stood with his hands open at his sides like a man who had forgotten what hands were for. I did not tell you, she said, because if I had told you, the baby would have been a weapon. And I did not want my son's first job in the world to be a weapon. I wanted his first job to be a person. So I gave him 7 months and 3 weeks of being only a person, of being only mine, of belonging to a woman who chose him before she chose anyone else's feelings about him, including yours, including mine, including his father's. The word father landed on the marble between them, and neither of them picked it up for a moment. He picked it up first. I am his father. You are his biological father. That is the same word. It is not, Ellie. It is not the same word, Daewon. A father is not a man who provided a cell. A father is a man who is in the room. A father is a man who hears the heartbeat at 12 weeks, and who holds the hand at 20, and who learns the difference between a kick and a hiccup at 26. A father is a man who buys the crib and assembles it wrong and laughs about it. A father is presence. Father is not biology. Father is presence. And you have been somewhere else. I did not know I was supposed to be in the room. You were supposed to be in the room the night I left. You chose another room. He flinched. The flinch traveled from his jaw down to his shoulders and into his hands, and his hands closed into fists at his sides and then opened again because he had learned, somewhere in the last 7 months, that closed fists in front of her would never again mean what they used to mean. I am not asking you to call me his father, he said quietly. I am asking you to let me be in the room. You are asking me a lot. I know. You are asking me to trust the same hands. I know. You are asking me to believe that the man who could not see me on a Tuesday in March is going to see a child every day for the rest of a life. Yes, she looked at him for a long time. Why should I? He did not answer with the speech she could see him trying to assemble behind his eyes. He did not give her the apology she had been waiting 7 months and 3 weeks to refuse. He did the one thing she had not prepared for. He sat down. He sat down on the cold marble of the corridor in his 3-piece turno from a tailor in Milan, and he put his hands flat on the floor on either side of him, and he looked up at her from below the level of her belly, and he said, very quietly, because I am tired of being the man who is too tall to see his own life. She did not move. I am not asking you to take me back. I am not asking you to come home. I am not asking you to put the ring back on. I am asking you to let me sit on a chair in a waiting room. I am asking you to let me hear a heartbeat through a wall. I am asking you to let me stand at a glass and look at him on the day he is born, and not be told to leave by a nurse who has my photograph in a folder marked, "Do not admit." That is what I am asking. Day 1. I will not touch you. I will not stand close to you. I will not put my hand on the belly. I will not call you my wife in front of anyone. I will be whatever you tell me I am allowed to be. But I cannot, Ellie. I cannot live in a city where my son is being born on a floor I am not allowed onto. The chandelier above him caught the gold thread in his lapel and threw a small bright line across the marble between his shoes. She looked at him sitting on a hotel floor in a $5,000 suit, and she did not feel triumph. She did not feel pity. She felt something harder than both. She felt the weight of being the person who got to decide. Get up. Ellie. Get up. You do not get to use the floor to make me feel sorry for you. Up. Now. He got up. He brushed nothing off the suit, because there was nothing on it. The plaza did not have dust. You will not be at the birth, she said. Not in the room. That room is mine and his, and the woman who has been holding my hand at every appointment for 6 months. And that woman is named Adayaze, and she does not know who you are, and I would like to keep it that way until I do not. All right. You will be allowed at 1 appointment a month, the ultrasound. You will sit in the chair in the corner. You will not speak unless the technician speaks to you. You will not ask questions about me. You will ask questions about him. All right. You will not show up at the foundation. You will not show up at my apartment. You will not put a car outside my building. If I see one car that I do not recognize on my block, the appointments stop, and you find out about your son from a lawyer. All right. You will not bring your name into this, not the family name, not the company, not the press. If one photograph of me and this belly ends up in a Korean newspaper because of you, the appointments stop. All right. And you will not, Daewon. You will not ever again, in any room, in any city, in any year of your life, kneel down in front of another woman with a ring in your hand without first telling me you are doing it. Because that woman in there, she lifted her chin toward the ballroom. That woman did not deserve what just happened to her. And whatever she is to you and whatever you are to her, she is a person. And she just had her face used as a stage for a feeling that was not even about her. So before you ever do that again to anyone, you will pick up a phone and you will call me and you will say the words out loud. Are we clear? He nodded once. Say it. We are clear. She turned to walk away. She got 2 steps. The service door that was painted to match the wall came open hard, and Yuna Park stepped into the corridor in champagne tulle, and a face that had been broken and reassembled in a powder room in under 15 minutes. Ellie stopped. Yuna did not look at Ellie first. Yuna looked at Daewon. The look traveled the length of the corridor with the precision of a woman who had been raised in Swiss boarding schools to put exactly the right amount of contempt into exactly the right square inch of skin. You, Yuna said in English, are not going to leave me in that room. Daewon opened his mouth. I am not finished. Yuna's voice was very controlled. I have given 7 years of my life to a contract that you and my father signed when I was 21. I have learned to smile at women I despise because they were useful to your mother. I have stood at 3 groundbreakings for buildings I will never enter. I have agreed to a wedding date I did not choose, for a dress I did not pick, for a man who has just publicly, in front of every name in this city, that I have spent a decade arranging into rows on a seating chart, declined to put a ring on my finger because... She finally turned her head and looked at Ellie. Of her. Yuna. Daewon's voice was low. I am not finished. She kept her eyes on Ellie. The diamonds at her throat moved slightly with her breathing. The empty space on her ring finger caught the chandelier and gave back nothing. You, Yuna said to Ellie, are pregnant. Yes. By him. Yes. You hid it from him. Yes, for 7 months. 7 months and 3 weeks. You came here tonight knowing he would be here. I came here tonight, Ellie said, because the foundation that pays for this gala houses women whose lives were ended by men who could not be told no. I did not come here to see him. I came here to see them. Convenient. It would have been convenient, Ellie said, if I had stayed in Brooklyn. It is not convenient that I am standing in a corridor with you. Yuna took 1 step forward in her stilettos. The stilettos clicked on the marble like a small countdown. Do you know, Yuna said, what it is to be the woman in the ballroom while another woman walks in the door? Yes. The word stopped Yuna cold. Ellie did not move. Her hand stayed on the top of her belly. The Bordeaux crepe did not move either. The whole corridor seemed to wait. I know what it is, Ellie said quietly. I know exactly what it is. I was in a bedroom in a penthouse in Tribeca on a Tuesday in March, and I opened a door I had opened 1,000 times, and the woman who was in the bed was you. I stood there. I stood there for I do not know how many seconds. I took the ring off my finger. I put it on the dresser. I walked out. I did not say a word. So when you ask me if I know what it is to be the woman who watches another woman walk in, yes, Yuna. I know. I am the woman who walked in. Yuna did not answer. And I am sorry, Ellie said. I am sorry that you are standing in this corridor tonight in that dress. I am sorry that 400 people watched a man fail to open a box in front of you. I am sorry that the photographers got the picture. I am not sorry for being alive. I am not sorry for being pregnant. I am not sorry for walking into the ballroom through the side door at 7:58 in a dress I picked for myself. But I am sorry, woman to woman, that this is the version of tonight that you will remember for the rest of your life. Because I remember mine, and I would not put it on anyone. Yuna's face did one small thing. The corner of her mouth twitched, not a smile, the opposite of a smile. The expression of a person who has been handed a sentence she did not know was the right one until she heard it spoken. You do not get to be kind to me, Yuna said. I am not being kind. I am being clear. There is a difference. In this corridor there is. Daewon had not moved. He stood between them on the marble like a man who had finally understood that the room he had been managing his whole life was not a room he was actually in charge of. Yuna looked at him. Daewon. Yuna. You are going to walk back into that ballroom with me. No. The word was flat. He did not soften it. You are going to walk back into that ballroom with me, Daewon, because if you do not, my father is going to find out before the dessert course that the Park Kang merger does not exist anymore, and the Park share price is going to open Monday morning at a number that I do not want to say in this corridor. You will walk back in. You will sit at the head table. You will eat the salmon. You will laugh at one joke. And tomorrow we will issue a statement that says the proposal was postponed for personal reasons, and that the wedding is being moved to the fall. And then in the fall we will quietly issue another statement. And then in the winter we will quietly issue another. And in a year nobody will remember tonight. That is what people of our families do. Yuna. That is what we do, Daewon. That is what your family does. It is not what I am going to do. He said it gently. He said it the way a man says a thing he has been practicing in his head on a flight from Seoul. I will walk back into that ballroom with you, he said. Once, I will walk you to the head table. I will pull out your chair. I will sit beside you for the next course. I will not embarrass you any more than I already have. And then at the end of the evening, when the photographers are gone, I will speak to your father. I will speak to mine. And what I will say to both of them is the truth. Which is that I cannot marry you. Which is that I should not have agreed to. Which is that, whatever the cost of saying that is, I will pay it. I will sign whatever I have to sign. I will lose whatever I have to lose. But I will not stand in front of a priest with a ring on your finger, while a woman I have a child with is in another borough of this city, wondering if I am ever going to be a person. Yuna did not cry. She was not the kind of woman who cried in corridors. She blinked once, slowly, and her eyes, when they opened again, were the eyes of a person doing arithmetic. You are going to ruin my family. I am going to release your family from a deal that should not have been made when you were 21. You will tell yourself that is the same thing. I will. It is not. I know. The arithmetic finished behind Yuna's eyes. Whatever the number was, it was not a number she liked. She turned her head a few degrees and looked at Ellie one more time. You, she said. Me. I do not know you. No, I do not want to know you. I understand, but I want you to understand something. Yuna's voice had gone very quiet. I did not seduce him. I want you to understand that. I do not care if you believe it, but the woman who walked into your bedroom that Tuesday was a woman who had been told for 7 years that the man she was promised to was already hers. I did not know there was a ring. I did not know there was a wife. I knew there was a fiancé, and I had been told for 7 years that the fiancé was a temporary arrangement. I am not telling you this to be forgiven. I am telling you this because you have a child. And one day that child is going to ask you what kind of woman the other woman was. And I would rather you told him she was a fool than told him she was a thief. Ellie looked at her for a long time. All right, she said. All right. I will tell him you were a person. Yuna's chin came up the smallest amount. Thank you. She did not say it to Ellie. She said it to the corridor. She said it to whatever part of the night was still listening. Then she turned to Daewon, and she put her arm through his with the trained grace of a woman who had been escorted into rooms since she was old enough to walk. And she said in a voice that the chandeliers above her would have recognized from any of 100 previous galas, "Take me back in." He looked at Ellie. Ellie nodded once. He walked Yuna back down the marble corridor toward the ballroom. The dragon on his neck was hidden again. His collar had closed. His tie was straight. From behind, the two of them looked exactly like the photograph the photographers had wanted. The heir and the bride. The merger and the dynasty. The future of two skylines walking arm in arm under chandeliers toward a room full of people who were about to applaud them for an engagement that no longer existed. Daniela came up beside Ellie. Mama Rose came up on the other side. Neither of them spoke. Ellie watched the Bordeaux of her own reflection move in the long mirror on the right of the corridor. She watched the gold earrings catch the light. She watched her own hand on the top of her belly, and the other hand under it, holding the weight of a small person who had just heard, from the inside, every word of a conversation he would not remember, and would also somehow always know. The ballroom door at the end of the corridor opened. The two figures stepped through. The door closed, the hydraulic hissed, the corridor was quiet. Ellie, Mama Rose's voice was soft. The board still wants you on that stage. They have been waiting for 15 minutes. They will wait 15 more if you say so, but they will wait. Ellie did not answer right away. She breathed in. She breathed out. She felt the small foot under her ribs slide left and settle. She felt the cool marble under her gold sandals. She felt the dragon on a man's neck disappear behind a closing door. She turned and looked back the way she had come. Behind her was Brooklyn. Behind her was a small apartment with a crib half built in a corner. Behind her was a closet that held only her clothes. Behind her was a life she had made out of the wreckage of another life, and she had made it by herself, with her hands, in 7 months and 3 weeks, while a child grew inside her, and a man on the other side of a river slept beside the wrong woman. In front of her was a ballroom, in front of her was a stage, in front of her was a microphone and a banner, and 400 people in black tie and a wall full of faces of women who had been left and who had not died of it. She placed both hands on top of her belly. She lifted her chin. She turned toward the ballroom door. "All right," she said. "Open it." The usher opened the door. The ballroom inhaled. 800 faces turned toward the side entrance, then turned again, slower, when they understood who was walking in. The chandeliers hung still. A waiter forgot the tray in his hand. Somewhere in the back of the room, a champagne flute slipped from someone's fingers and shattered against marble. Ellie did not look at the broken glass. She kept one hand on top of her belly and the other under it. The Bordeaux dress moved with her like water. Her chin stayed lifted. Her steps were measured, not slow. A woman who had already decided where she was going. Daewon was still on the dais. The black velvet box was still closed in his palm. Yuna was still beside him in the champagne gown, her bare back to the room, her smile frozen at the corner. Her mascara had not run yet. She had not allowed it. The crowd parted. Ellie walked between the round tables draped in cream linen, past the centerpieces of white orchids, past the silver buckets sweating around dark green bottles. A senator's wife touched her own throat and did not breathe. A real estate mogul stepped sideways without realizing it. 2 photographers raised their cameras and did not click. Even they understood, somehow, that this was not the moment to flash. A boy of 9, the only child allowed in the room, the grandson of the gala chair, leaned out from his chair at table 3 to watch her pass. His mother put a hand on his shoulder. He did not sit back. He watched Ellie the way he had watched the Macy's parade balloons 2 months earlier, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. He had never seen a pregnant woman walk like that. He would remember her later, when he was 20, and could not say why. The string quartet at the corner of the dais had stopped playing 4 bars into the engagement piece. The cellist, an older Korean woman with white-streaked hair, set her bow across her knee and folded her hands. She had been hired by the Park family for the evening. She would not be paid in full. She had already understood that, and her hands were still steady on the strings she was no longer playing. A woman at table 14 stood up, then another at table 6, then half the room. It took Ellie a full minute to cross to the dais. She did not look at Daewon. She did not look at Yuna. She looked at the woman behind the podium. Margaret Castellanos, the chair of the Plaza Hospitality Gala Committee, was 61 years old, silver bob, navy gown, pearls the size of olives. She had been holding the microphone for 10 minutes without using it. When Ellie reached the steps, Margaret came down to meet her. She took Ellie's hand in both of hers, the way old women take the hand of someone they have decided to protect in public. "You came," Margaret said. Quiet. "Only for her. I came. Are you ready?" Ellie breathed in once, all the way down. "Yes." Margaret guided her up the 3 carpeted steps. Yuna's eyes followed every inch. Daewon did not move. He could not. His knee was still half bent from where he had risen. His tie hung crooked. The velvet box was still in his right hand, fingers curled around it like he had forgotten how to set it down. Margaret reached the podium. She tapped the microphone twice. The room found a new silence, a deeper one. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, "thank you for your patience. Tonight's ceremony has had an unexpected guest, but not, I assure you, an uninvited one." She paused. She let the line sit. "In fact, the woman walking up these steps is the entire reason we are gathered here this evening." Yuna's smile cracked at the left corner. The crack traveled to the right, then her mouth went flat. Margaret turned the microphone slightly toward herself. 3 years ago, a young woman walked into my office in Brooklyn, carrying a notebook and a bus ticket. She had $800 in her checking account. She told me she wanted to start a foundation for single mothers who had been abandoned by powerful men, mothers who had been told to disappear quietly because their pregnancies were inconvenient. Margaret looked out at the ballroom. I told her the math did not work. I told her the rich do not fund mirrors of their own behavior. A small ripple of laughter from the older women near the front, the kind of laughter that has knives in it. I was wrong, Margaret said. She turned to Ellie. She held out her hand. In 36 months, Roots and Wings Foundation has rehoused 241 women across 4 boroughs. It has placed 86 children in stable schools. It has paid the medical bills of mothers whose names will never be in this room, because nobody let them stay in it long enough. Margaret paused. And tonight, the Gala Committee is honored to recognize, as the youngest ever recipient of the Plaza Hospitality Foundation Award, with a matching grant of $12 million raised from the donors gathered in this room, Miss Ellie Ortiz. The applause came in a wave. Not polite applause, the other kind. The kind that begins when the people near the front realize the people near the back have already stood, and then everyone stands at once, because nobody wants to be the one still sitting. Daewon's mouth opened. He closed it. Yuna took a step backward. Her heel caught the edge of the carpet. She did not fall, but she had to put a hand on the podium to steady herself. Her hand touched Daewon's sleeve. He pulled his arm away without looking at her. Ellie walked to the microphone. She did not adjust it. She did not clear her throat. She did not thank anyone yet, she said. When my mother died, I was 11. The room went still in a different way, not shocked still, listening still. She cleaned offices on the night shift in Midtown. She walked from the bus stop on 8th Avenue to our apartment in the Bronx every morning at 5. She was 43 years old. She had a heart that gave out on a kitchen floor, and the man who fathered me was a name on a birth certificate I never met. Ellie placed one hand on the top of the podium. She was a single mother. She was alone. She did not have a foundation. She did not have a committee. She had a son she loved more than her own breath, and she had nobody to call when the breath stopped. She lifted her eyes. Roots and Wings exists because she did not. The senator's wife at table 4 put her napkin to her face. A man at table 17 looked at the ceiling because the alternative was worse. To the 241 women we have served, Ellie said, you are not invisible. To the 86 children, your mothers chose you. Every day, twice on Sundays. You are not a mistake. You are a decision. She paused. And to the $12 million raised in this room tonight, thank you for believing, finally, that the women you have spent your careers leaving behind are worth catching. She did not look at Daewon. She did not have to. This award belongs to my mother. Her name was Vivienne Ortiz. She was 38 when she had me. She never let me feel small. Ellie took the heavy crystal plaque from Margaret's hands. She held it against her chest, just above the curve of her belly. The applause came back, louder. She turned. Daewon was still standing where he had been standing for what felt like an hour. The velvet box was still in his hand. He looked at her. She let him look. She did not give him a smile, and she did not give him cruelty. She gave him the same expression Vivienne Ortiz used to give the supervisor who tried to dock her hours. Then Ellie walked off the dais. Yuna grabbed Daewon's elbow. Say something. He did not. Daewon, say something. Now. He pulled his arm free. He did not look at her either. The orchestra leader, a thin man in tails hovering near the velvet curtain, raised a hand uncertainly toward his musicians. Margaret waved him off without turning her head. Not yet, the gesture said. The room understood. The room waited. That was when the second thing happened. A man in a charcoal suit moved out from behind the curtain at the back of the dais. He was 45, narrow shoulders, wire-rimmed glasses, the kind of face that belonged in a deposition. Under his arm, he carried a black leather portfolio. He walked straight to Daewon and stopped at his right shoulder. Sir, he said, soft, it cannot wait. Daewon did not turn his head. Later, it cannot wait, sir. Something in the man's voice, the flatness of it, made Daewon turn. His name was Lee Jun-shik, and he had been Daewon's personal counsel for 9 years. Jun-shik did not interrupt. Jun-shik had never, in 9 years, walked onto a dais. Daewon took the portfolio. He did not open it. He looked at Jun-shik's face. He read what was there. He opened it. 3 documents, the top one, 2 pages, the middle one, 6. The bottom one, a single sheet with a list of numbers in the right column that did not stop. Daewon read the top page. Then he read it again. The muscle in his jaw moved. Yuna leaned in. What is that? Daewon turned the page. He read the second. Day 1. What is that? He looked at Junshik. When? Filed Tuesday in the Seoul Central District Court. Sealed at the request of the petitioner. We obtained the copy through Han at the regulator's office at 6 this evening. The hearing is Friday. And the Park Group? Liabilities exceed assets by 480 million. They have been moving paper between 3 shell companies in Singapore for 14 months to stall the audit. The audit closes Monday. Daewon's eyes did not move from the document. And the marriage clause in the merger agreement? Triggers a personal guarantee from you for the entire park balance sheet within 48 hours of the wedding. Your assets become collateral. Your foundation accounts become collateral. Everything. Yuna had stopped breathing. Daewon closed the portfolio. He turned to her. Finally. The expression on his face was not anger. Anger was a thing you spent. This was older than anger. This was a thing he had paid for already, and did not intend to pay for again. You knew, he said. Yuna's mouth opened. Day 1. How long? It is not. How long, Yuna? She took a step back. Her champagne train caught around her ankles. She did not fix it. 8 months, she said. Quiet. Maybe 9. The dinner at the Mandarin. When you cried about your father's heart. That was 8 months ago. Day 1. Please. Your father is not sick. Your father is bankrupt. There is a difference. Margaret Castellanos took 2 careful steps back from the podium. She did not leave the dais, but she gave them air. The room did not move. 800 people watching a thing they had not paid to see, and not one of them looked away. Daewon lifted the microphone off the podium. He held it down at his side for a second. Then he raised it. My apologies, he said. His voice came through the speakers, calm, almost conversational. There has been a change in the program. A waiter at the back set down a tray very slowly. As of this moment, Daewon said, the engagement between myself and Miss Yuna Park is dissolved. The merger between the Kang Holdings and the Park Industrial Group, scheduled to be announced next Thursday, is dissolved. No personal guarantee will be signed. No combined entity will exist. Any document already drafted in anticipation is void. Yuna's hand went to her throat. A young reporter at the press table near the kitchen door was already typing into her phone with her thumb under the table. A photographer beside her lifted his lens half an inch and lowered it again, unsure of the rules. Daewon did not look at them. He did not need to. He had handled 3 of these rooms in his life. He knew that the only thing the press wanted more than a wedding was a wedding that did not happen. My legal counsel will issue a formal statement to the press within the hour, Daewon said. Until then, I would ask the photographers in this room, as a courtesy, to refrain from publishing images of Miss Park until her family has had the opportunity to manage their announcement on their own terms. He paused. He looked at Yuna. The courtesy was for the family name, not for her. She knew the difference. I want to be clear, Daewon said, that this decision is not a response to the events of the past hour. It is a response to information I should have asked for months ago. The fault for the timing is mine. The fault for the deception is not. He set the microphone back on the podium. Yuna found her voice. It was a thinner voice than the one she had walked in with. You will regret this. Daewon did not answer. My father will. Your father is on a plane to Seoul. He left this morning. He did not tell you. The blood went out of Yuna's face in a single line, top to bottom. A man at table 2 stood up. Then his wife. Then the man beside him. Not applause. Departure. The kind of departure that begins when people understand that the price of being seen next to someone has just changed. By the time Yuna turned to look at the room, 3 tables had emptied. By the time she turned back, 5 more had. The park name had been the second name on the gala program. It had taken less than 4 minutes for it to become the name nobody wanted to be seen sitting near. Yuna took a step toward Daewon. He stepped sideways. She caught air. The diamond gown that had cost her father's company $48,000 suddenly weighed twice what it had weighed when she put it on. The cathedral train was caught under the foot of a chair she had not noticed. She bent, ungraceful, and tugged it free. The bead at the hem snapped off. It rolled across the dais and stopped at Daewon's shoe. He did not pick it up. A woman from the Hong Kong delegation, a textiles heiress who had flown in that morning and was scheduled to sign with Park Industrial on Monday, stood up from table 11, looked at her assistant, and said one word in Cantonese. The assistant nodded. They left without their coats. Their coats would be sent to the hotel by the coat check girl, who had already understood that the tip pool tonight was going to come from one side of the room only. She turned. She walked off the dais alone, her train dragged behind her across the carpet. She did not look at any of the faces she passed. The faces did not look at her either, which was worse. Two of her bridesmaids, a publicist from Geneva and a cousin from Busan, slipped out of the side door before she reached them. By the time Yuna reached the corridor, there was no one waiting. Inside the ballroom, Margaret Castellanos took the microphone back. Her hands were steady. 61 years of charity work had given her steady hands. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, "in light of the evening's developments, the committee will pause the program for 15 minutes. Dinner service will resume on the half hour. We thank you for your discretion." She set the microphone down. She turned. She walked off the dais and straight to where Ellie was standing. Ellie had not moved. The crystal plaque was still against her chest. The Bordeaux dress was still flawless. Her hand was still on the top of her belly. Daewon was 3 steps behind Margaret, then 2, then beside her. He did not speak first. He waited. Ellie looked at him. The plaque caught the light from the chandelier and threw a fractured rectangle of white onto the marble between them. "I did not know," he said. Quiet. "Only for her. About the foundation or about her? Either. That is the problem, Daewon." He nodded once. He did not argue. Margaret touched Ellie's elbow. "The press will want a statement. They will wait as long as you tell them to wait. Tell them tomorrow. And the donors? Send a typed note to every name on the seating chart. Thank them by name. Thank the room collectively for the 12. Do not mention the second half of the evening." Ellie did not blink. "We do not need their pity money. We need their next check." Margaret almost smiled. She caught it. "Tomorrow morning, then." Tomorrow morning. Margaret stepped back. She moved toward the side of the dais, where a junior coordinator was already on the phone, walking the donors through what to say to which reporter. Margaret would handle the room. Ellie had bought herself 5 minutes. Daewon was still standing in front of her. "You set this up," he said. "Not an accusation, a recognition. I did not set anything up. I confirmed an award I had been notified about 3 weeks ago. I confirmed it the day the invitation arrived for your engagement at the same venue on the same evening. You knew I would be here. I knew the gala would be here. I assumed you would be where the money was." She did not say it with cruelty. She said it the way a nurse confirms a diagnosis. He closed his eyes for 1 beat, then opened them. "And the entrance? The dress? The timing?" Margaret choreographs the award presentation. "I told her I would be late. I told her why." Ellie's hand stayed on her belly. "I did not stage your kneeling, Daewon. You did that on your own." He had no answer for that. He looked down at the velvet box still in his left hand. He had been carrying it for the entire conversation. He had forgotten he was carrying it. He looked at it the way a man looks at an object he is not sure belongs to him anymore. He held it out. "I did not buy this for her." Ellie did not take it. She did not look at it. "I do not want it," she said. "Then or now. It was always day one." She lifted her chin. "Whatever sentence you are about to finish, do not. Not in this dress. Not in this room. Not with $12 million of other people's money in my name on the wall behind you." She paused. "If you have something to say to me, you say it to me on a Tuesday afternoon, in a place where there is no audience and no chandelier. You say it when there is nothing in it for you and nothing in it for the cameras. Then I will decide whether I want to listen." He lowered the box. He nodded. "Tuesday," he said. "Maybe Tuesday. Maybe never. That is my choice now, and it is going to stay my choice." She started to turn. He moved a half step. "Ellie?" She stopped. "The baby. What about him?" "It is a him." She did not answer for a long second. Then she said, "Yes." He swallowed. The dragon tattoo on his neck moved once with the swallow. The collar of his shirt caught on it. "I have not earned the right to know more than that tonight." "No," she said. "You have not." She turned. She walked toward the side exit Margaret had used for her own. Her Bordeaux dress moved behind her like a slow wave. 2 of the older women at the front tables stood as she passed and did not sit back down until she was gone. In the corridor outside the ballroom, the noise dropped by half. The marble walls swallowed everything. Ellie stopped beside the same gold-leafed mirror she had checked her reflection in less than an hour ago. She looked at herself. The plaque was still against her chest. Her hand was still on her belly. Her makeup was intact. Her hair had not moved. A woman with a clipboard appeared at her elbow. "Junior coordinator." 23 years old, black braids pinned up, eyes wet at the corners and pretending not to be. Miss Ortiz, your car is 2 minutes. Yes, ma'am. And tell Margaret that the Hong Kong delegation left. Have her call them in the morning. Not tonight. In the morning, after coffee, before the press cycle hits Seoul. Tell her to mention Roots and Wings before she mentions the Kang Holdings. Yes, ma'am. And there is a cellist in there. Older woman, white streak in her hair. She was hired by the Park family. Pay her full fee from our discretionary line. Tonight. Cash if you have to. The coordinator wrote it down. Her hand was shaking. She did not let it show in her writing. Anything else, Miss Ortiz? Ellie looked at the girl. 23, probably from Bed-Stuy. Probably the first in her family inside a room like this one. Ellie remembered being 23 in the wrong dress at the wrong gala, learning what the rich did with their napkins when they wanted to signal they were done. Yes, Ellie said. Eat something tonight. A real meal. Not the leftovers from the tray. Ma'am, you did good work this evening. You held the timing. The lighting cue on the side door was you? Yes, ma'am. Eat something. That is an instruction. The girl nodded. She walked back toward the ballroom with the clipboard pressed to her chest like a shield, and her chin half an inch higher than it had been when she arrived. Ellie watched her go. She had walked into the plaza expecting to ruin a wedding. She had walked out with $12 million, a foundation that would house another 200 women by Christmas, an enemy bankrupt and on a plane, and the man who had broken her 3 years ago standing alone on a dais with an unopened ring in his hand. She did not smile. She did not cry. She put the plaque under her arm. She placed both palms flat against her belly, top and bottom, the way she had been doing for 7 months, and she breathed in once, all the way down. Did you hear all that? She said. Quiet. Only for him. The baby kicked once, hard, against her left palm. Good, Ellie said. Remember it. Behind her, somewhere inside the ballroom, a single set of footsteps walked toward the corridor and stopped at the door. She did not turn around. She did not need to. She knew the weight of his step now, the way she had once known the weight of his breathing in the dark. The footsteps did not come through the door. After a long moment, they walked away. Ellie waited until the marble was quiet again. Then she lifted her chin, pulled the plaque against her side, and walked the length of the corridor toward the lobby, where a car was already waiting for her at the curb on Fifth Avenue, where the rain had finally started, soft and clean against the awning, the way rain falls on a night that has changed everything. The car smelled of leather and rain. Ellie set the plaque against the seat beside her, rested both palms on the high curve of her belly, and watched the wet city slide past in long streaks of gold and red. She did not cry. She had cried months ago, in a Brooklyn kitchen with a half-eaten piece of toast and a positive test on the counter. Tonight she only breathed. By the time the car crossed the bridge and the skyline shrank into a smeared constellation, the rain had thickened into the kind that makes a city honest. The baby moved once against her ribs, and she pressed her hand flat above it and whispered, "We did it, baby. We walked out with our name." The brownstone was warm when she opened the door. A neighbor had left a covered dish on the stoop. Ellie kicked off the gold sandals at the threshold, walked barefoot across the cool floorboards, left the plaque on the kitchen table, and filled a glass of water. Then she went upstairs and finally took out the phone. 47 missed calls. 14 from a number she had not saved. She set the phone face down. She did not block the number. She did not answer. She turned out the lamp, lay on her side with a pillow between her knees, and slept. 3 days passed before he came. She had asked Marisol to vet every visitor. The foundation was already moving on the night of the gala. Checks were clearing. The press was framing Roots and Wings as the only adult in a room of scandals, and a quiet line of women had begun to call the intake number asking, in voices small and unsure, if the program took mothers who were still pregnant. Marisol fielded everything. Ellie spent the mornings on the porch swing with her tea, her hand on her belly, listening to children shout in Spanish from the corner store. On the third afternoon, Marisol stepped out onto the porch with her arms folded and her jaw set. He's at the gate. Ellie did not look up. Alone? Alone. No driver, no coat. Cameras? None I can see. Ellie set the tea down. Let him stand a minute. She did not say it cruelly. She said it the way a doctor says wait. There was a thing she needed to settle in herself before she opened the door, and she settled it by breathing in for 4 counts and out for 6, until the slow flutter inside her ribs steadied. Then she rose, smoothed the front of her long linen dress over the rise of her belly, and walked down the hall. Kang Dae-won was on the other side of the wrought iron, hands at his sides, no umbrella. The rain that had been falling all morning soaked through the shoulders of his black coat. The dragon at his neck was visible above the wet collar, the black ink darker for the water. He did not look like a man who had canceled a merger and a wedding on a microphone. He looked like a man who had not slept. She did not unlock the gate. She stood 3 feet from it and let the iron be between them. "I'm not here to ask for anything," he said. "Good. I came to listen." "Then listen." She did not raise her voice. The rain made a soft white noise around them, and her words moved through it without effort. "I am going to set rules. You are going to follow them. If you do not follow them, I will not see you again, and the child will know your name on a piece of paper and nothing else. Are you ready?" "Yes." Number 1. You will come to appointments. Not all of them, the ones I invite you to. You will come without cars, without security, without phones, without anyone watching. You will sit where I tell you to sit. You will not speak to the doctor unless the doctor speaks to you. You will not touch me unless I reach for you first. Yes. Number 2. There will be no marriage. Not now, not in a year, not in 5. Do not bring it up. Do not have it brought up by anyone you know. If a single article suggests we are engaged, I will know it came from your side, and the door closes. Yes. Number 3. There will be no romance. We are not dating. We are not reconciling. We are not a story. We are 2 adults sharing a child. If you cannot hold that line in your own head, do not stand at this gate. He did not flinch. The rain ran from his jaw to his collar. I can hold it. Number 4. Her voice softened, but only a half step. You broke something. You do not get to fix it by being generous now. Do not send money. Do not send gifts. Do not send anyone. If this child ever needs something from you, I will tell you. Until then, you bring yourself, empty-handed, and you bring him your time. Time is the only currency I am taking from you. Yes? Number 5. She paused. The baby moved against her hand, a slow press of a heel. You will never lie to him about who you were. When he is old enough to ask why his mother and his father do not live together, you will tell him the truth, in words his age can carry. You will not blame me. You will not blame yourself in front of him. You will say, I made a choice that hurt your mother, and she chose to protect you from it. That is the sentence. You will learn it. I will learn it. She studied him through the iron. He had not moved. He had not interrupted. He had not negotiated. Last thing. She set her palm flat on the gate. Not to open it, only to steady herself. If you ever bring another woman near this child without telling me first, in writing, with 30 days of warning, I will take him to a country you do not have an office in, and you will not find us. I understand. She unlocked the gate. She did not invite him inside. She let him stand on the path under the dripping wisteria, while she said the only soft thing she would say that afternoon. There is an appointment Thursday, 9 in the morning, Mount Sinai, Brooklyn. Dr. Adelaja. You come in through the rear entrance off Pacific. You wear something a stranger would not photograph. You sit 2 chairs away from me in the waiting room until I nod. Are we clear? We are clear. She closed the gate. She locked it. She walked back up the steps without turning around, and only when the front door was shut and the deadbolt was thrown did her shoulders come down from her ears. Marisol was waiting in the hallway. Well? He listened. Anyone can listen. That's why Thursday matters. Thursday came gray and cool. Ellie wore wide black trousers and a soft cream sweater that draped over the belly. She walked into the waiting room at 8:53. He was already there, in a dark jacket and a baseball cap she had never seen him wear, sitting 2 chairs from the end of the row, hands folded, eyes on the floor. No watch, no ring, no phone in sight. He had taken the dragon and tucked it under a charcoal turtleneck so that only the topmost coil showed at the line of his jaw, and even that was muted in the bad fluorescent light. He looked, for the first time since she had known him, like a man who belonged to no empire. He did not look up when she sat down. He waited for her nod. She gave it, small, after a long minute. Then he slid 1 chair closer and rested his forearms on his knees and said nothing. The nurse called her name. He stood when she stood and did not move toward her. He walked 3 steps behind her down the corridor until she stopped at the exam room door and said, You can come in. Dr. Adelaja was a tall Nigerian woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense mouth. She had been briefed. She did not greet him by name. She gestured him to the chair in the corner, and he sat, and he became, for the next 40 minutes, the quietest man in the building. Ellie lay back on the table. The gel was cool. The wand moved. The screen turned its grainy gray, and then there, suddenly, a shape, a profile, a small fist curled near the chin, the long, bright pulse of a heart. Strong rhythm, Dr. Adelaja said. 142. He's measuring on the larger side for 30 weeks. You're doing beautifully, Ms. Ortiz. Ellie nodded. She had heard it before. It was always new. Dr. Adelaja turned the speaker up. The room filled with the wet, fast, rushing sound of a baby's heartbeat, like a small horse running through water, like a clock that had decided to live. Ellie kept her eyes on the screen. She did not look at the corner. She heard him, though. A breath in, a breath that caught, and then a long, long quiet that was not quiet at all, because she could hear him swallowing it down, the way men of a certain making are taught to swallow everything. She did not turn her head. She did not offer her hand. She let him have the corner. When the nurse wiped the gel from her belly and Dr. Adelaja stepped out to print the images, Ellie sat up slowly and reached for the cardigan folded at the end of the table. Then, only then, she looked. He was leaning forward, elbows on knees, both hands pressed flat against his face. His shoulders were shaking, not loudly, not for show, just the small, helpless shake of a man who has finally heard a thing he cannot buy his way out of. Ellie watched him for a count of 5, then she said, "Day 1. He did not lower his hands. "Day 1. Look at me." He lowered them. His eyes were red. He did not wipe them. "That is your son," she said quietly. "That is the only thing in this room you do not get to negotiate. Do you understand?" "Yes. Get up. Get the printouts from the desk. Hold the door for me. Walk 3 steps behind. We are leaving." He got up. He got the printouts. He held the door. He walked 3 steps behind her down the corridor, and when they reached the rear entrance and a black car he had not arranged was waiting at the curb because she had ordered her own, he stopped at the sliding door and said, "Thank you." "For what?" "For letting me hear him." She paused with her hand on the car door. The rain had stopped. The pavement was bright with puddles. "Hearing him is the easy part," she said. "Be there when he cries at 3 in the morning and you cannot fix it. That's the part." She got in the car. The door closed. He stood on the curb in the cap and the turtleneck and watched the car pull away, and he did not move until it had turned the corner. The next appointment he came again, and the one after. He did not ask for more than she offered. He did not text between visits. Once, in the 5th week, Marisol intercepted a delivery at the door, a small package, no return address, and brought it to Ellie in the kitchen. Ellie opened it. Inside was a single folded square of paper, no card, no signature. On the paper, in clean black hand, was written a column of numbers: height, weight, head circumference, heart rate, copied from the last ultrasound report. Below the numbers, 3 words: "I am learning." Ellie folded the paper. She did not throw it out. She put it in the drawer where she kept the foundation's earliest receipts. Then she put a kettle on. The scare came at 34 weeks. She was at the foundation office on a Tuesday afternoon, signing a stack of grant letters, when a pain moved across the low part of her belly, like a hand closing slowly into a fist. She set the pen down. She breathed. The pain eased. 2 minutes later it came again, harder, and a small, hot rush of something that was not water made her stand up too fast. Marisol was already on her feet. Hospital. Now. Call Dr. Adelaja. Call her from the car. Call. Ellie stopped. She swallowed. She did not want to say the name. She said it anyway. Call him. Marisol looked at her once, hard, then nodded and dialed. He was at Mount Sinai, Brooklyn before the car was. He had been in Manhattan, in a meeting on the 42nd floor of a building that did not matter, and he had left it standing, left a Japanese delegation mid-sentence, left a folder of signed pages on a glass table, left his coat on the back of a chair, and he had run. He did not run for cars. He did not run for elevators. He had not run for anything in 15 years. He ran for this. When the gurney came through the doors, he was in the corridor in a wrinkled shirt and no jacket, the dragon dark and uncovered at his throat, and he did not push past the nurses. He stood at the wall. He waited. He looked at Ellie on the gurney, and his face did a thing it had never done in any boardroom or any back room of any club he had ever owned. It broke. She saw him. She did not have the breath to speak. The contraction took her, and she closed her eyes, and when it passed she opened them and lifted her left hand, 2 inches off the rail, palm up. He came. He took it carefully, like a thing he had not earned. He walked beside the gurney all the way to the room. He did not let go until a nurse made him. It was not labor, not yet. Placental irritation, Dr. Adelija said, and a small bleed that was already slowing. Bed rest. Monitoring overnight, the baby was fine, the heart rate was strong, the baby was already, in the doctor's words, a stubborn one. Ellie was set up in a private room by evening, the monitor beeping its steady reassurance, an IV in her arm. The lights were low. He had been allowed to stay. He sat in the chair by the window with his elbows on his knees and his hands clasped in front of his mouth, and he did not speak for an hour. She watched him from the bed. The hospital gown was soft. The blanket smelled of bleach. Her hand rested on the slope of her belly. Finally, she said, "Come here." He came, sit. She nodded at the edge of the bed. He sat, careful of the wires. She held out her hand. He took it. She did not squeeze. She just held. "I was scared," she said. "I know. I am still scared. I know. Don't tell me it's going to be fine. You don't know. I won't." They sat like that for a long time. The monitor counted out the small, fast hoofbeats of their son. Somewhere down the hall, a baby that was not theirs began to cry, and a nurse's soft voice answered it, and the cry stopped. Ellie closed her eyes. Her hand stayed in his. She did not let go when she fell asleep. He did not move his arm, even when it went numb at the elbow, even when the angle made his shoulder ache. He sat through the night in the bad chair pulled close to the bed and watched the rise and fall of her belly under the thin blanket, and he understood, finally, what the rules had been for. They had not been for punishment. They had been for him to learn what it meant to be near a thing he was not allowed to own. 6 weeks later, on a bright morning in early September, Ellie's water broke in the kitchen. She was making toast. The same kitchen, the same loaf of bread, the same small Brooklyn light through the window. The water came in a warm, surprising rush, and she laughed, once, out loud, alone in the room, because the body is so absurd and so honest. Then she called Marisol. Then she called Dr. Adelija. Then she called him. He answered on the first ring. Now, I'm in the car. I'm already in the car. He had been sleeping in a small apartment 3 blocks away for a month. He had not told her. Marisol had told her, 2 weeks in, because Marisol believed in clean information. Ellie had said nothing. She had not asked him to leave the apartment. She had not asked him to stay. She had let it be a fact in the world, the way the weather was a fact. He was at the brownstone in 7 minutes. He carried her bag. He did not carry her. He held the door of the car. He sat in the front seat with the driver, because she had not invited him to the back. He turned around every 30 seconds to ask if she was all right, and she said yes every time. And on the 4th time she laughed and said, "Stop asking." And he laughed too, a short, surprised laugh, and the driver smiled at the road. Labor was long, 22 hours. She had chosen a natural birth. There was a midwife and a soft-voiced Haitian doula named Edwidge, who rubbed her lower back through every contraction with a tennis ball wrapped in a sock. There was a long walk down the corridor at 3 in the morning, with Edwidge on one side and him on the other, Ellie's hands braced on their forearms, her bare feet slapping the cold linoleum, her belly leading. He did what he had been told. He did not coach. He did not count. He did not say breathe. He brought ice chips when she nodded at the cup. He pressed a cold cloth to the back of her neck when she asked, and only when she asked. His phone was in a locker down the hall. In the last hour, she reached for his hand and crushed it, and he did not make a sound. She swore once, in Spanish, a word her grandmother had used when the chickens got into the garden. The midwife laughed. He laughed, quietly, near her ear, and she heard it, and she smiled even through the long animal sound she made when the baby crowned, even through the impossible burning stretch, the moment when she thought, "No, I cannot." And then her body did anyway, because bodies do. The baby came at 5:47 in the morning. He came purple and furious and beautiful, all fists, all noise, and Dr. Adelija lifted him to Ellie's chest, and Ellie put her hands on him, both hands, the way she had been putting her hands on him for 9 months, and she said his name out loud for the first time. Noah. Noah Ortiz Kang. Hi. Hi, my love. Hi. The baby quieted against her skin. He blinked. He had a thick head of black hair, and skin the warm middle color of both of them, and his eyes, when they opened, were dark and almond-shaped and serious, and he looked at her, like he had been waiting a long time to meet her. Daewon was standing at the side of the bed. He had not moved closer than the rail. He was crying, openly now, without trying to hide it, and his shoulders were shaking, and he was the most quiet he had ever been. Ellie looked at him over the small dark head of their son. "Come here," she said. He came. "Sit down before you fall." He sat. She did not hand the baby to him. She turned a little, carefully, and tilted Noah so that the small face was angled toward his father, and she said, "Noah, this is your dad. Dad, this is Noah. You two are going to know each other for a long time." Daewon lifted one hand and let one finger, just the tip of one finger, rest against the curl of Noah's hand. The baby's fingers opened slowly and closed around it. Daewon made a sound that was not a word. "I know," Ellie said softly. "I know." They stayed like that until the nurse needed to weigh him. 7 pounds, 11 ounces, 21 inches, Apgar 9 and 9. A loud, healthy cry when the cold scale touched his back. Edwidge wrapped him in a white cotton blanket with a gray stripe along the edge and set a small white cap on his head and gave him back to his mother, and his mother put him to her breast, and he latched on the first try, and the room let out a collective breath that nobody had known they were holding. Daewon stayed. He slept 3 hours in the chair. He took the small jobs, the first dark diaper while the nurse showed him how, the bottles, the slow corridor walks with the baby on his shoulder when Ellie needed to shower. He did not hold Noah longer than Ellie offered. He did not post anything. He did not call anyone. The world, for 48 hours, did not know that the son of Kang Daewon had been born, and the silence was the most generous thing he had ever given. On the morning of the third day, Ellie was discharged. She dressed slowly, in a soft black knit dress and flat shoes, her hair pulled back, no jewelry. Noah was asleep in the bassinet by the bed, swaddled tight, his small chin tucked into the white cotton. Daewon was at the window in a clean shirt that Marisol had brought him, looking out at the parking lot, where a cold, clear autumn sun was warming the tops of the cars. He turned when she finished tying her shoes. "Ellie." "Yes." He crossed the room. He did not touch her. He stopped a foot away. "I am not going to ask you to forget." She lifted her eyes to his. They were steady. They had been steady for a long time. "Good," she said, "because I am not going to." He nodded once. "But I am here," he said, "for as long as you let me be, on your rules, in your shape. I am not going anywhere. I know. And if one day, don't." She lifted a hand, gently. "Don't say one day. One day is the kind of sentence that breaks Rule 3. You stay in today. Today, you carry the car seat. Today, you walk to the curb. Today, you put the diaper bag in the back. That's the whole day. That's the only day you get." He smiled. It was a small smile. It reached his eyes. "Today," he said. "Today." He picked up the car seat. He had practiced with it for a week. Noah slept through the buckling. The white cap slipped a little over one ear, and Daewon corrected it with the back of one finger, and Ellie watched and said nothing. The nurse brought the wheelchair. Hospital policy. Ellie sat, and Marisol took the bag of flowers, and Daewon carried the car seat in both hands as if it were a thing made of glass, and the small procession moved down the corridor toward the elevator. In the lobby, late autumn light came through the tall windows in long warm bars. A few people in waiting room chairs looked up and looked away, politely, the way New Yorkers do. Marisol went ahead to flag the car. At the automatic doors, Ellie stood up from the chair. She thanked the nurse. She took a breath of the cold, clean outside air. Daewon was a half step behind her with the car seat. She turned her head, just enough. "Walk beside me," she said. He moved up. He was not behind her. He was not in front of her. He was at her shoulder, the car seat between them, the small new face inside it pink with sleep, and the three of them stepped out of the hospital and into the bright morning together. The car was at the curb. The driver opened the door. Marisol slid into the front. Ellie ducked into the back. Daewon fitted the car seat into the base with both hands, checked the strap 3 times the way the nurse had shown him, and then walked around to the other side and got in. He sat next to the car seat. Ellie sat on the other side. Between them, their son slept in his white cap, in his white blanket with the gray stripe, oblivious and small and entirely loved. The driver pulled away from the curb. Ellie looked out the window. The hospital slid back. The avenue opened up. The trees along the median were just beginning to turn, the first yellows showing at the tips, and the sun was very bright and very kind. She put her hand on the edge of the car seat. After a moment, he put his hand on the other edge. Their fingers did not touch. They did not need to. The small dark head between them rose and fell with his small dark breaths, and the city moved past the windows, and somewhere uptown the world was going on with its noise and its hunger and its scandal, and none of it could reach them in this car. On this morning, on this one good day, a family is not rebuilt with a ring. A family is rebuilt with presence. And presence, Ellie had learned, is the slowest and most expensive thing a person can ever offer, paid in mornings and middle of the nights, in held tongues and kept rules, in standing in the corner of an exam room and being quiet, in running through the lobby of a hospital without your coat, in walking beside, not behind, when the doors open and the light comes in. The car turned onto the bridge. Brooklyn rose ahead in brown rooftops and water towers. Noah made a small sound in his sleep. The driver said nothing and drove them home. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever walked away from someone in silence, knowing your dignity was worth more than any explanation they could give you? Have you ever protected a child from a truth that wasn't ready to be told? And if love ever came back to your door, would you let it kneel beside you instead of in front of you? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, motherhood, and presence over promises, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.